evening. Before we go into, we do have Ms. Egan joining us by telephone. She had a surgical procedure, so I would like to say that we're glad that her surgery went well, and we appreciate that she is calling in this evening. So she is here by phone and has her own microphone. So we do start this evening by a very short closed session that we will be going into, then we will be coming back and continuing with the rest of the meeting, but we have to start this evening with a quick closed session.
Okay.
So Mr. Hirons?
A motion pursuant to Section 2.23711A of the Code of Virginia, I move that Stafford County School Board convene a closed meeting to discuss an appointment of personnel pursuant to personnel exemption at Section 2.23711A1 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Irene. And we are in closed session. We'll be back in just a moment. We are back from closed session. We will be reading our motion out of closed session.
Madam Chair, by motion, whereas the Stafford County School Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote in accordance with provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.23712 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended requires certification by the school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore it be resolved that the Stafford County School Board hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which the certification applies, and only such public business matters were identified in the motion convening the closed session were heard, discussed, or considered.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, can you poll the board, please?
Mr. Connolly. Aye. Cater. Agree. Segan.
Agreed.
Hazard.
Agree.
Seeley. Agree. Mr. Hirons.
Agreed.
Mr. McOsker.
Agreed.
Madam Chair, your motion passed unanimously.
Do we have a motion from closed
Madam
session?
Chair, I would move that the school board, Stafford County School Board, accept the superintendent's recommendation for the position of clerk to the school board.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It carries unanimously. Dr. Benson, can you please make our announcement?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Hall, if I could get you to stand up, everybody could see you. So it's my pleasure to announce that Ms. Melissa Hall will be our next clerk of the board. She comes to us with a wealth of experience in the governmental sector. She's worked as an administrative assistant for local government and schools in Florida, as well as federal government as administrative assistant for the U.S. Air Force and the Veterans Health Administration. Her duties include office management, an array of clerical responsibilities, accounting, and pre-employment investigations. She's currently administrative assistant at the University of Mary Washington with duties including meeting planning, minutes correspondence, budget management, and procurement. Her accomplishments include streamlining business procedures to maximize efficiency and development of a data retrieval system for the department. We're pleased to have her join us in our transition with Ms. Uring moving on to spend some time with her husband in North Carolina. We certainly don't want to say replace. We've had an incredible experience with Ms. Uring as the clerk of the board. We're thankful that we're able to appoint Ms. Hall this evening to be the next clerk of the board to effect, we think, a really nice transition. So thank you. Welcome.
And thanks for coming and spending the evening with us tonight. Next, we are going to move on to our invocation, and we are going to have our colors presented by the Brook Point High School Navy ROTC. I will let them come forward to present, if all those would rise, and then we will share in the Pledge of Allegiance after presentation.
Colors. Halt. Left face. March. Colors. Halt. Carry. Colors. Ready. Cut. Present. Colors.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carry. Colors. Ready. Cut. Order. Colors. Ready. Cut. Right face. March. Forward. March.
You all may be seated, and I'd like to thank our cadets this evening for coming to present the colors. Moving on, we will move on to approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Before we move on, I do have a request from Ms. Egan to ask that 10.07 be moved from consent, because she has a comment regarding that item. Is there any objection to moving that to the top of the action items? Is that okay for the board?
Correct.
Okay.
No problem.
No problem. All right. Motion to approve with that change. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The agenda is approved. Now we start with one of our favorite parts of the evening. I'd like, with our awards and recognitions, I'd like to start off with recognizing Dr. Jim Stemple from Mountain View High School for presentation of awards.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, school board members, Dr. Benson. It gives me great pleasure finally to bring to you the 2016 varsity field hockey team and present to you the 2016 VHSL Group 5A state champions. If they come forward at this time. They move faster on the field hockey field, I promise. As they come forward, I would like to highlight the best field hockey team in the state of Virginia in Group 5A. These young ladies completed a season with a record of 18-5. 3 of those losses coming at the crosstown rival and a very talented Stafford High School, Stafford Indian team, to include a loss in the conference championship. But like your coaches and great teams, you want to peak at the end of the season. They would not lose again after that loss. They won the regional championship. They won, and then by winning 3 straight, and again beating Stafford, and then again won the state championship by beating Stafford to become the state champions. Their head coach is Kimmy Sullivan. She has done an outstanding job and are assisted by Deb Hamilton, Christina Fallon, and Sarah Reynolds. Members of the team are Lily Bringleson, Brianna Cross, Maggie Hubert, Maddie Hyatt, Molly Lynch, Madison Hatcher, Lily Stewart, Yasmin White, Michelle Snow, Natalie Tortolero, Sierra White, Elizabeth Ramberger, Madison LaRoe, Riley Brzezinski, Simone Tapp, Mackenzie Rivero, Samara Hughes, and Maya Tino. Congratulations, state champions. Well done. She wants a picture, so you got to squeeze in. No.
We would now like to recognize Ms. Tammy Hawk, principal of Brook Point High School, for presentation of awards.
Thank you, and good evening, Madam Chair, school board members, and Dr. Benson. At this time, I'd like to congratulate the Brook Point High School wrestling team. They've won the 2017 5A state wrestling title. Our Blackhawk wrestling team is the first team in the history of Brook Point High School to win a state title. We are extremely proud of these wrestlers' hard work, dedication, and commitment to achieve this honor. If their coaches and the team could come down front, please.
Come on down. Woo-hoo.
I'd like to introduce these award-winning Blackhawks to you. First off, our head coach, Jake Johnson. Assistant coach, Derek Mainville. And assistant coach, Travis Harris. Our team, I would ask that you hold your applause till we get all the way to the end, but Bruno Alves, if you could raise your hand, you had 5th place at 106 pounds. Justice Jones had 5th place at 113 pounds. Raise your hand. Josh Montague, 3rd place at 120 pounds. Joseph Knight, 2nd place at 132. AJ Dutel, 5th place at 145. Paul Pierce, 4th place at 160. Nathaniel Neverson with a record of 1 and 2. Mike Roman with a record of 1 and 2. Ramses Montalvo, 1st place at 285 pounds. And then our very own back-to-back state champion, Russ Pierce, 1st place at 195 pounds. I do see Logan Petterini out there. Are there any other members of the team in the audience? Could you all stand and be recognized also? Thank you all for this great first-time victory.
Did they hear? Okay, they heard you, Ivy.
Reach outside, we'll get your search. Reach outside.
As these champions are taking their seat, I'd like to invite Mr. Greg Daniel to come forward. Come down for 4.
Good evening, Madam Chair, school board members, and Dr. Benson. Please help me in congratulating the Colonial Forge girls basketball team on their 2017 6A state championship. At this time, can I have the young ladies and coaches join me?
That's right, that's the basketball team.
This is the first girls basketball state title in Stafford County history. Colonial Forge is extremely proud of all the players, coaches, and managers for their dedication, commitment, and resiliency that is required to accomplish such a great honor. Congratulations to the following coaches and team members: please raise your hand to be recognized when I call your names. Head coach LaShawn Cook. So that we can get through this expeditiously, can you please hold your applause until the end? Assistant coach Markel Davis. Assistant coach Antonio Howard. And assistant coach Delma Burnell. And our players that are represented tonight, we have Riley Morrison, Jamise Shellington, Alex Sullivan, Kiana Warmack, Cameron Downs, Zakiah Lewis, Tania Brown, Shakira Austin, Olivia Gaither, Camille Downs, Christian Chu, and managers Isis Reed and Kristen Javar. Congratulations once again to our 2017 Girls State Basketball Champions. Good job, ladies. My name is Sorry, sir. I'm sorry, sir. You forgive me? Thank you, guys. We'll give you certificates. Okay. Yep, one more. Colonial Forge is also proud to announce another state championship for our wrestling team. At this time, will the wrestlers and coaches please join me up front? The 2017 Colonial Forge wrestling team captured their 16th straight conference title, 15th straight regional title, and culminated this fantastic season with a 3rd straight state title and 7th overall. Colonial Forge wrestling program has continually demonstrated incredible work ethic, dedication, and commitment that is unrivaled by any wrestling program in the state. At this time, please join me in congratulating the following team members and coaches. And again, team members and coaches, I ask that you raise your hand to be recognized once your name is called. Head coach Ian Squires, assistant coach John Barr, assistant coach Dale Oliver, assistant coach Evan Stribling, assistant coach Cameron Houston, assistant coach Drew Squires, assistant coach PJ Zielinski. And for our players, Austin Mitchell, Joseph Vastano, Alexander Smith, Levi Engelman, Mark Garofalo, Clay Smith, Jacob Martinez, Jared Huntziger, Jared Lowe, Matthew Stone, Eze Jaquize, Runzel Green, Mauricio Ambriz Rodriguez, and Alex Watson. Once again, please join me in congratulating the 2017 Virginia High School League 6A State Wrestling Champions.
And the school board would now like to recognize
Sorry about that.
so stop them all. Mr. Berry saw for his recognition of his team that got all these state champions
That's
safely
right.
to school and safely to those state championship
That's right.
tournaments.
One person forgot their blue rodeo shirt tonight, and guess who it is?
You're forgiven.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, and Dr. Benson. The Region 3 School Bus Rodeo was held in Spotsylvania County on April 8th. 30 drivers from around the region participated in the event. If you're not familiar with the school bus rodeo, it involves taking a written rigorous test, followed by driving a course which includes having to navigate the bus tires through tennis balls without touching the tennis balls. And it also includes parallel parking the bus. It includes backing the bus into tight spaces, demonstrating a correct bus stop, demonstrating a correct right turn. And so, but I'm proud to say that I had 6 folks, one couldn't be with us this evening, but 6 folks who decided to test their skills against other drivers from the region. And the 6 drivers who took the challenge, Bob Brutsky couldn't be here with us, but Emily Coleman, James Perkins, Ed Potter, Terry Wellborn, and Lisa Whitesell. Awards were given that day by school division and by region. The top 3 finishers for Stafford County were Ed Potter, Lisa Whitesell, and James Perkins. The overall results for the event saw 2 of the top 3 spots taken by Stafford County drivers. Lisa Whitesell took 3rd place overall, and Mr. Ed Potter took 1st place in the region. So this is really no easy task, and I'm proud of all of them. Another integral part of the rodeo are the judges. Without the judges, there's no rodeo. We had 1 driver, Gleanna Tompkins, who couldn't join us tonight, and 2 supervisors, Carrie Rossell and Barbara Lancaster, who volunteered their time on that Saturday to judge. I'm really proud to work with such a great group of individuals. And if I go off script, are you going to yank me out of here? Ed Potter is going to be representing Stafford in the state rodeo in June, and James Perkins and Bob Brutsky will be representing the special needs portion of the state rodeo. So, good job.
Thank you all for all that you do. I lost my thing. All right. At this time, I'd like to recognize Ms. Tonda Lovelace, Assistant Branch Manager of Apple Federal Credit Union, for presentation of awards.
Good evening, Madam Chair, school board members, and Dr. Benson. On behalf of Apple Federal Credit Union, I would like to thank the PS School Board for inviting us tonight. My name is Tonda Lovelace, and I'm the Assistant Branch Manager at Apple FCU's Stafford Branch, located in the Stafford Marketplace on Garrisonville Road. We are pleased to be here tonight to honor 2016 SCPS Service Employee of the Year, Kayla Knutson. Kayla was nominated by her peers and selected as the grand prize winner. The original prize was changed to a cash award. This is a great honor, and we are proud to recognize her accomplishments. Kayla?
Kayla, come on up.
Kayla, from Apple FCU to you, we have a check for $2,500. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, you have to get in the picture. Congratulations to Ms. Knutson, but also I would really like to thank our wonderful partner, Apple Federal Credit Union. They are such an integral part of what we do, and they so support the many programs that we have here. So on behalf of the board and our school division, we really thank Apple Credit Union for everything, and thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our, this is our time for citizen comment. This evening, I have several people who have signed in. I will read their names first, and if they would just come forward, and you can go one after another. If you also wish to speak to the board, you do not have to have signed up, but if you want to sort of make your way to the corner so you can come forward quickly, I'll go over the instructions first, and then I will call forward everyone, and everyone who would like to speak this evening will have that opportunity. Speakers shall identify themselves by name, address, and organizational affiliation if the spokesperson represents an organization. Speakers shall also announce the purpose or topic of their comments. 3 minutes will be allotted to speakers. You will see we have the stoplight system. When you see the yellow light come on, that means there's 1 minute remaining. When the red goes off, that means your time has expired. You'll get about 5 seconds to wrap it up. The chairman reserves the right to restrict the total citizen comment received at any particular meeting to a predetermined maximum number of minutes with the approval of the board. Please know that we do not have an exchange. We are here to listen during public comment. We will not be having a dialogue together, but we will be considering your comments. Citizen comment, which is profane, abusive, or which threatens imminent physical harm, shall be ruled out of order by the chair. Although the board provides the opportunity for citizen comment, individuals desiring to register complaints against division employees or division programs, services, or activities may also utilize the procedures outlined in Policy 1113, Public Complaints. I'm going to first go to the list. I have Dakota Cayley and Karen Huzo. If you all want to come forward. I also have Karen Wright and Kristen Kanu, maybe. If you all just would come forward, and I will let you all start. We'll give you a moment to set up. Don't worry, we won't start till you start speaking.
Hi, my name is Karen Wazo, and I am a junior at Riverbend High School, previously attending North Stafford High School.
And I'm Dakota Cayley, and I'm a junior at Stafford High School. We are here today as members of Y Street. You may remember me from last year's school board meeting. Y Street is a youth volunteer movement founded by the Virginia Foundation for Healthy Youth. We are here to talk about Y Street's 24/7 campaign, which is helping Virginia schools be tobacco and e-cigarette free 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. Under a 100% comprehensive policy, tobacco and e-cigarette use, possession, and distribution is prohibited by anyone, anywhere, at any time. The Stafford County School Division is doing a great job committing to the health of students, staff, and visitors. We are asking you to update your policy so that it is 100% comprehensive.
First, we recommend updating the definition of property in your policies. The current policy prohibits tobacco use inside certain buildings and vehicles, but there are potential gray areas that it may not cover. We recommend that the updated policy include all school premises inside and outside, owned, leased, rented, or chartered by the school division. Include any school-sponsored or school-related event, whether on or off-site. Second, define tobacco product and tobacco use to include electronic smoking devices and products containing nicotine. By including these terms directly in your definition, it is clear that the entire policy applies to alternative products. Third, require consequences for visitors. Consequences support administrators and staff on the ground to ensure the policy is enforced. Fourth, add a provision requiring tobacco-free signs to be posted on school property. Signs help to effectively communicate and enforce the policy to the school and community. Finally, expand language to provide referrals to cessation resources for staff and students. The 24/7 tobacco-free and e-cigarette-free schools toolkit details these resources and make it easy to offer them as necessary. As a partner and resource to the Stafford County School Division, we are here to offer to help update your tobacco policy so that it includes all tobacco-free language.
Once you decide to adopt a new policy, the 24/7 campaign has great ways to support implementing and enforcing the policy. First, we will give you free tobacco signage. Second, we will give you a free tobacco toolkit will be sent to every school. And third, we will put you on our official map of 100% comprehensive schools. Finally, in your folder, you will see some examples of how you can get positive public publicity for updating the policy. On behalf of Y Street, we thank you today for taking your time to learn about 24/7 campaign, and I hope that Stafford County Public Schools will become the 29th school division with a 100% comprehensive tobacco policy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you would like to leave if you'd like to leave your comments with our clerk. Oh, I'm sorry, you're way ahead. She already has them. So thank you all for coming. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Karen Wright. The subject, redistricting the elementary schools. Did you need an address? The time is chiming me down, but
No,
here we
keep
go.
going.
Here we go.
We've got
Karen
it.
Wright. Good evening. I sent an email about 6 o'clock this evening in regards to that subject, and I'd like to read that. This is a late follow-up regarding the subject matter, and hopefully my family's concern and written voice will be heard using this form of communication. Although it is with uncertainty, the way in which the school board will vote and/or approve the redistricting of the elementary schools affecting the Plantation Road residences, our concern is the requirements needed to ensure that my granddaughter, and she's in the audience tonight, will be able to attend Margaret Brent Elementary and continue the educational path for which she has responded so well. The current school is an enhancement to her foundational education received in the city of Virginia Beach, Virginia, for which we are and am proud of her success thus far in the city of Stafford, Fredericksburg, since the 2015-2016 school year. We are not silent, we are not invisible, we only want the best for Harmony, and would greatly be disappointed if this measure passes. Again, we respectfully request the procedures needed to ensure that this one student, Harmony, is able to continue her studies at the school of her choice, Margaret Elementary School. Okay? And
thank you.
Harmony, if you can stand, sweetheart. Stand.
Sure.
She's in love with Margaret Brent. And the principal's here tonight, too. We saw him. Mr. Fitzgerald, I believe?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, again, thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see, Kristen?
Kristen Kanu. I'm here for the redistricting. My address is 7 Crimson Way. I have 2 daughters at Falmouth, 1 in 2nd and 1 in 4th. I had spoke at the town hall, I had spoke at the public hearing, and I was here last time at the school board meeting, and there were just a few things that I was unclear about. One is, I saw you guys recognize the librarians, and I think that is great, and how important they are. And yet, when looking at Falmouth, one of the considerations is moving our music room right next to our library, which would distract our librarian from being able to fulfill his duties. So to me, that was a little bit of a contradiction about how important they are, and yet that's a consideration. The second was somewhere along the line there was mentioned that Falmouth has enjoyed this Title I status, 18 kids per classroom. I don't know where that number came from, but this is what I would like to request as my child, both of my daughters, be moved into those classrooms, because I can guarantee they're not, and I don't know what classrooms those are. I know that at the meeting it was talked about having a tour of the school. Well, that was brought up back in February at the town hall, is, you know, inviting the school board to the school to tour it, because what you guys would see is you would see, you know, sometimes those hallways are just as bad as 95. Traffic going both ways, you're having to stop the classes, start the classes, you know, hold on, stop, you know, there's other classes coming through. Meanwhile, the teachers are testing out in the hallways. Don't even get me started on Stafford County testing, because that's a whole nother subject. But, you know, that's exactly what you would see. The other thing that I was really confused about is when actually, Mr. Hirons, you said that you were surprised that the teachers had not been consulted, because I know that I brought that up at the public hearing, is to these teachers who would be impacted, are not only our music teacher, our librarian, but our MD teacher, our PT, and our OT, one of our LD teachers who pulls out and uses one of the rooms that is being considered. And as far as I know, you know, you guys heard from our music teacher last time, but as far as I know, still none of those teachers have been consulted as to if they can still do their job to the caliber with those resources being removed. And so I don't understand how a good decision in the best interest of our children can be made when the experts have not been consulted, the very people who work with these children. Oh my word, I only have 8 seconds. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else this evening who wishes to speak to the board? If so, come on up. And if there's anybody else, feel free to go ahead and at least get out of your seat to stand to the side. And then all you need to do is introduce yourself. And then when you leave, if you will sign in on the clipboard behind you.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Simone Wright. That's actually my daughter, Harmony, her grandmother. We recently have moved, and this is in regards to the elementary redistricting. We've moved from Virginia Beach in 2015. She's excelled tremendously since she's been here at Margaret Brent Elementary. I would hate to see for her to go from that school. I don't mind private transportation if there is a way for that to be proposed or anything of that sort. I just would hate for her to go. She loves the school that she's at right now. Just having her go to a different school, it would put more pressure on myself, her grandmother. She has anxiety in a type of way, and I would hate for that to even be a little bit more stronger than what it is. But if it can be reconsidered, possibly with private transportation for herself, in order for her to stay at that school, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the board? Okay, I don't see anybody leaping over the seat, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Hold on, let me get my stuff. Next, we have our board member committee reports. I will, any board member committee reports this evening? Mr. Hirons, do you want to start us off?
I feel like I start here. We did have a FAB meeting, Finance and Budget Committee meeting last night. And in addition to the stuff we received about the budget, we won't review that until we get to the agenda item. But staff did give us, asked for our guidance on a couple of issues, one being thresholds for procurements and at what level they need bids, quotes, or have to be sealed bids. And what staff had found is we were a little out of the line with some of our comparison districts as well as our county government. Our thresholds were lower than even county government. So we recommended to them to go forward with the direction they were heading to update those, and that will be brought to us as a full board. Will we have to approve that at some point? in the not-too-distant future. I think that was the primary thing I wanted to make sure everybody was up to date on.
Very good.
And we'll hear plenty more about the budget in a few minutes.
That's right. Anybody else, any other board committee reports? I don't believe we've had any since we had spring break last week. All right. Moving along, we will move on to superintendent's comments. Dr. Benson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just two items this evening. I just would like to announce publicly again that we have the Stafford Education Foundation recognition dinner tomorrow evening at Mountain View High School at 6 p.m. We will be awarding 18 grants to teachers, innovative teaching grants, as well as 5 scholarships, one to a graduating senior from each one of our high schools who intends to pursue a career in education. And we have a non-binding agreement to come to work for us that we'll also be asking them to assign as we take a look at trying to recruit a little bit earlier than what we might usually. And then on Friday evening at North Stafford High School, we have Electrify Your Strings concert. My class visit this week will be to H.H. Poole on Friday, an 8th grade orchestra class that will be preparing for that concert. So I'm brushing up on pentatonic scale and trying to figure out whether or not I might be able to practice with them a little bit prior to that concert. So that's all I have this evening.
Even though I shouldn't make any comment, that it's a really great concert. I can tell you from there. Moving on then to our consent items. As you recall, we have consent items 1 through 8 are on ours, but 7 has been, it's been repopulated, sorry.
Move to approve consent. However, I think Mr. McCosker, did your edits, I saw an email to Ms. Euring for edits for minutes.
Yeah, they got in there.
Okay.
They were in our,
They're
what
in.
we're approving.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
So move to approve consent?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of approving consent, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously regarding consent. We move on to action items. Now, 11.01 is in regard to the approve the Spartan Oaks subdivision as a non-transportation zone for Stafford Middle and Brook Point High School. Ms. Egan, do you want to make a comment from the phone? We can put you up by the microphone, or how would you like?
Yeah, that'd be great. I'll keep it really brief because I'm sure other people on the board have some opinions about this as well. Tell me when to go.
You go ahead.
Okay. So this is something that we always anticipate when we have developments going up around our schools. It makes sense to designate them as walking communities. You know, as long as it's within, I think it's a mile radius or something like that. It qualifies for a walkable zone. This Spartan Oaks subdivision, which is by Stafford Middle School, is unique. It is a by right development with many of the homes facing directly at the school. Because it's a by right development, the school board or the school division nor the county had any say in what resources or infrastructure went in there. So there were no proffers required or anything else like that. We couldn't ask for anything. So while we designate this as a walkable zone, the builder decided to go in and not put in any sidewalks. So our students, even though it's a walking zone, will have to be walking on the street to go across the street. So I just wanted our parents to know about the difference between by right developments and other things like that, and that we don't have any control over what the by right developers or the development does when they do things like this. Inevitably, we're going to have people calling us saying, you know, my kids got to walk to school, and now all these parents who are dropping off have to compete with my. This is not something that we can help at the moment. So I just wanted everybody to know that I'm not opposed to this being a walking zone. I wanted folks to know that, you know, these by right developments and being able to have control or being able to be much profitable more really does hurt us in the long run. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and you all can have a discussion if you want about it. I just wanted to throw that out there for everyone to kind of get a grasp of what we're dealing with the no proffers.
No, I appreciate that, and I know that you wanted to make that comment, and just to dovetail on what Ms. Egan said, by right development under, I believe it's 50 units, do not even come to the Planning Commission or even, I believe, the Board of Supervisors. So requests such as sidewalks and such like that do not get to come through that process, which I believe was something that Ms. Egan was also trying to communicate. But I do support, actually, because of where it sits, if you drive past it, I will be supporting the motion, but I appreciate the comments of Ms. Egan. Any other comments? If not, oh, yes, I'm sorry, Ms. Healy.
Thank you, Ms. Hazard. I had a question about this last time because of the no sidewalks, which I do have some concerns with that, but at least they're middle school students. But I would ask that, that this be monitored and that we receive a report after, say, the first month or so of school to make sure that no issues arise with respect to a safety concern.
Ms. Euring, if you could note that for our next clerk, who I know is here in attendance, but for us to just put on that wonderful list for the future of things to highlight for the future. Any other? You may go ahead and make a motion.
Motion to approve 11.01.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Egan.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on to 1102. This is regarding approving an option for Falmouth Elementary School redistricting effective for the 2017-2018 school year. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion for option 2 for discussion.
There's been a motion to approve option 2. Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Second for discussion, option 2.
Madam Chair, I have a substitute motion.
All right. Go ahead.
Move to approve option 3.
It's been a motion to approve option 3. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded for option 3. Okay, we have option 2.
One quick statement, Ms. Kane. I've been told by school administration, Sally's sitting in the back shaking her head, that the music room is not going to be moved, I hope, period, no matter what option we end up adopting, just so we are clear on that. So, thank you guys at the school and Mr. Peabody for being here again. You're going to have to bring kids at some point and have them sing to us.
Before we take a vote on any of this, can somebody please list what the options entail?
I've got them kind of written down right here. Madam
Sure,
Chairman, may I
can-
throw a third option in there?
Option.
And that would
Is this
be
another-
substitute motion for option 1.
Okay, is there a second for option 1 for discussion? Or,
Second.
all right,
Madam Chair, can somebody please explain what the option 1 is, please?
Okay.
Yes,
Oh,
well-
go ahead, Madam
Go
Chair,
ahead.
I'm sorry.
no,
We can discuss all 3 of these
So,
options.
hey, Irene, this is Dwayne.
Thank you.
You sound pretty clear on the phone. That's good. Option 1 is we move 110 students from Margaret Brent to the 2 APUs in Margaret Brent. We move to Falmouth Elementary School. Option 2 is the Ferry Farm Elementary School, 52 kids, and the Margaret Brent, 65 kids, for a total of, I think, 117. Option 3 is Margaret Brent Elementary School, 65, to Falmouth alone. And option 4 is Ferry Farm Elementary School to Falmouth Elementary School alone with 52 kids. Option 3 is 65 kids. Did you get that?
I got it, but wasn't there also an option to do a graduated relocation?
Currently, there is none as of yet. You could always make a motion.
at this point, these are just the ones that are presented with the numbers being effective for the 2017-18 school year.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's see. All right, in backwards order, correct, Mr.? Okay. All right, let's look at option 1 would be the first one.
1, 2, or 3,
One-
essentially. 4 is off
1,
the
3, 2,
table.
right.
Or there's no motion for 4 currently.
Right, so right now
I
we've
wish
got
there would be
3.
a motion for 4
Just to make
to
it,
discuss.
Let's see if everything fails.
that's right. So let's discuss, or is it the pleasure of the board to discuss all options together, or do you want to do them in separate order? I know we have a motion on the table, but I'm trying to.
As the first motion, do I get to speak first?
Backwards.
No, actually,
Backwards?
it'd be last.
It's back, you get to.
Well, I'd like to discuss all of them.
I would too.
I
I
think it
would
would
too.
be helpful to discuss all the options
Okay,
at this
so,
point.
Mr. Nelson, should we, how should we handle the motions on the table? Can we table those until discussion, or can we just discuss them in the sense? Okay, all right, just wanted to make sure, this isn't all right. So, who would like to start us off? If there's anybody who wants to start us off. Mr. McCosker, would you like to start us off?
Sure, I'll start off. You know, everyone wants the cards on the table, right? So they can, so that's good. Well, I appreciate the community's involvement in this redistricting effort. You know, I made a motion for option 2, which moved Margaret Brent and Ferry Farm together for the 117. It's actually the largest amount of students. I didn't go for option 4, which just moved Ferry Farm, which you know, I hope we can get back to later on tonight, and I'll give you my reasons for that. You know, over 12 months ago, I approached this board with a briefing concerning the move of 52 students from England Point Run to from Ferry Farm to another elementary school that was closer. It was brought to me by the community and the school itself that, you know, we were having issues with the length of bus ride. There was traffic congestion on 17. It was being redone. And I'd also like to point out that in this briefing, I didn't single out Falmouth Elementary School, but I also added Hartwood Elementary School to go against traffic and go the other way as the recipient for this community. It was the board that chose Falmouth Elementary as a recipient, and Hartwood went off the table for several reasons. This effort was recognized and pushed. This redistricting effort was recognized, and it was pushed into the last fall, and then we pushed it again here till April tonight. You know, I'll remind the board of the following situation with these kids. You know, in 2008, 2009, this neighborhood developed the England Point Run Estates, approximately 2008, 2009, and it was identified by the Stafford County Public School staff and board that it would attend Falmouth Elementary School since it was a new neighborhood. But since Falmouth Elementary School was under renovation, this community was sent to Ferry Farm Elementary School, who we took these kids in, and they're part of our team. They're Eagles now. But the first issue that came up with these kids was that it was the long bus rides. And during the last elementary school redistricting, I actually stood up for these kids and said, we're not going to move these kids back. We're going to try to fix the bus rides, and we did to a point. However, still, by your attachment tonight in the documents that were asked for, the bus ride lengths, you'll see that, you know, these kids still arrive at Ferry Farm Elementary School at 8:58 in the morning. And this was a problem that some of the teachers and the school staff and the PTO discussed, where these kids are almost 90% free and reduced kids, and they go right to breakfast, and then they go to their classroom, which they arrive after 9 o'clock, which is the start time for instruction. Therefore, they miss instruction, or the students or the teacher delays instruction for these kids. The bus ride is still long and a miserable one, but that's something across the county, and I fully recognize that. So our first issue was bringing these kids across the county and passing a closer elementary school where the bus rides would be more doable, if you will, which alleviated a little bit, and hopefully they would arrive closer to have 10 minutes at least to eat lunch. You know, Ferry Farm Elementary School is currently at 90% design capacity, which, as we know, design capacity is not always how many kids that are available in the school. That's how many kids that the designer has decided that would be in the school. And as you know, that programmatics, there's design capacity and there's program capacity. And program capacity would be that you may have a Title I school with the K through 3, which is 18 kids or less in that school, and so you can't fit all those kids into those number of rooms. That would be program capacity. Or maybe your art room only takes a few kids. That would be a program capacity issue. And I fully understand that Falmouth Elementary School may have some program capacity issues, and that should be discussed tonight as well. I'll tell you that Ferry Farm Elementary School at 90% right now has a lot of program capacity issues. I mentioned about the basement. Well, there are no classes in the basement per se, but there are gifted classes being, math and science are being down there. The reading breakout is down there. We try not to keep the kids in the basement in the windowless rooms for less than an hour, according to the principal. So we still have the windowless rooms on the first floor with a kindergarten and another class in it, and converted storage space as a closet. So as you know, that Ferry Farm Elementary School was not recipient to a renovation. It's one of the 3 schools. Actually, there's only 2 left, I think. There's only 2 left. After Moncure gets done, it's going to be Ferry Farm, 1957, and then it's going to be Hartwood Elementary School, which is 1950-something-ish. I don't know the date of that. So these are 2 really old schools that we're really trying to do our best, but they're without renovation. And every other school is either new or renovated, which makes a difference when it comes to the capacity and the way that we teach our kids. That was mentioned for hours on hours as we went through our new educational designs about how important educational design was. So this is also an issue at Ferry Farm. We still, as you see tonight, that it was asked last week that we have our computer by Mrs. Healy, that the computer labs. How many schools have computer labs? And we see in our attachment that Ferry Farm is one of the few, I think there's 3, that have no computer lab available. We've already used that and converted that into training space. Some elementary schools have 2. We'll discuss that a little bit later as well. The children of this community deserve the opportunity to make friends and stay with them through their Stafford County Public Schools career. We talk about collaboration and the 5 W's. Well, this is a big part of it. Currently, these 52 students attend Ferry Farm, and then they go off to attend Gale and Colonial Forge High School. The Ferry Farm students, who they've made friends with and bonded over the 5-6 years, they go to Dixon Smith High School and then Stafford High School, so they're never seen again. And, this is not equity for the kids at Ferry Farm who've made the friends, or from this community that have made the friends. Last year, even up through this fall, this board identified Ferry Farm as the sole redistricting effort for this elementary school redistricting. And now we have Margaret Brent Elementary School. All of a sudden, 2 of the 4 options were approved tonight for approval. I was a little confused. I didn't hear any of these increased numbers with by right development, which is development that, when a farmer sells his land, we don't really have visibility of that, and he builds houses, or she builds houses. I didn't hear about this during the high school redistricting, and so we have these numbers coming in now for this redistricting, which concerns me. So it's hard to pinpoint when these folks buy property, but I will admit that Margaret Brent Elementary School needs some relief. But however, if Margaret Brent Elementary School is being considered for the move tonight by some board members, then why the heck are we moving Margaret Brent kids and sending them now across the county to Falmouth when there's a school 1.8 miles away, 4 minutes, Rock Hill Elementary School, sitting at mid-60s in capacity, and they go down into 62% 5 years out in 21, just like we identified our analysis for the high school effort, 2021. So here, this Margaret Brent Elementary School thing is thrown in the mix. I'm sitting here going, hey, I just want the kids to have an educational experience like everybody else. And now it's Margaret Brent, Margaret Brent, Margaret Brent. Well, if we're going to talk about Margaret Brent, let's talk about other schools. Let's talk about Rock Hill. All I wanted was to get the the Ferry Farm Elementary School kids to a school that they will collaborate with the school. And right now, that one option, which was not identified by me, was Falmouth Elementary School. It makes absolutely no sense sending Margaret Brent Elementary School to Falmouth Elementary School. No sense whatsoever. You know, this board talks a lot about bus safety and travel safety. So we're okay with sending these kids on the bus over to Falmouth Elementary School when they could be going 1.8 miles up the street? I'm not okay with that. So after examining these options presented tonight, you know, whether it's option 2, it's option 4, not, you know, I put option 4 on the table, which was 117, which I know is a lot for Falmouth because you have that program capacity issue. But I do recognize that Margaret Brenton does need some help. So, I mean, I hope that this board moves the kids from Falmouth Elementary School and either postpones for a year the Margaret Brent issue to discuss and bring Rock Hill Elementary back into the mix in this, and bring Hartwood back into the mix, and to discuss those real options that make sense. Thank you.
So do we, is there,
Are we still discussing?
we are still in discussion.
Dwayne, just for some clarification, you kept referencing Rock Hill Elementary
Yes, Rock Hill Elementary School.
being how close to these students?
It is 1.8 miles away, 4 minutes from Margaret Brent Elementary
From
School.
Margaret Brent. So you're suggesting there could be other opportunities to,
Yes, I am suggesting that.
I just wanted to be clear because
Yeah.
it didn't, because you kept referencing these
Yes.
students and why bus them all the way across the county, et cetera. Well, we'll get to that. But I did make the motion for option 3. I've come to the conclusion that we're going to have to, or it's in the best interest of some students in Stafford County to make some move and make some more use out of Falmouth Elementary School. There's been some debate and discussion about this idea that these students were always, in particular the Ferry Farm neighborhood, were always targeted to be moved to Falmouth Elementary, but because of the renovation, they weren't. I haven't seen evidence of that was the case, and it may have been discussed during committee meetings or even by the board and not captured in minutes. It was before my time, and I'm not aware of it. I've been informed by community members that that was not the case. That was not officially adopted or approved. So there's that general misconception out there that these students were always targeted to go to Falmouth Elementary School. Nothing on record as stating such. So the community did come to me with concerns about Falmouth being able to handle and make adjustments to their programs for any students to come in. I think the majority of the public comment that we've heard, both from the public hearing, from a town hall that I hosted, and from speakers here at this meeting and previous meetings, were from Falmouth Elementary parents who expressed their concerns about the number of students coming in and what it would do to their programs, which is absolutely appreciated. And most of the parents understood and have appreciation for a need to move some folks, some children into Falmouth Elementary and make the appropriate adjustments. My goal, my force up here has been to make sure the best resolution for Falmouth Elementary is what occurs. I appreciate folks like Mr. Peabody who came in and expressed his concerns about the music room. We made certain that that was clarified, and hopefully under any scenario, the music room is not moved, because we did take a little tour, Ms. Decatur and I, of Falmouth Elementary, and it was I had never been into the music room, or I'm sorry, I've never been into the computer lab, the current computer lab there. And I did ask this question during various discussions about the potential disruption of having a music class right next to a library. And it was pointed out very clearly in the tour that there's a door that goes right into the library from that computer lab, so it would make absolutely no sense at all to have music in that classroom. So I do appreciate the staff that worked on that and made sure that Mr. Peabody is going to continue to be able to have the classroom that he has now to teach those students to their music, if you will. So with this and knowing that there is a need to move some students, or it's the safety and concern of the students on Plantation Drive, which is unfortunately where we look at as the Band-Aid of the county, or of South County in particular. These are the neighborhoods that are kind of picked and placed, and there are students off of Plantation Drive that attend 4 elementary schools, 5 elementary schools, and quite frankly, if you drive the roads and if you know the roads between Plantation Drive, Ferry Farm, and then the roads to Margaret Brent, I would much rather have students going to Ferry Farm, much safer road, much safer drive in my opinion, than the students going to Margaret Brent. Frankly, I wish that Falmouth had the capacity and availability, or we had capacity and availability in one of our schools to get students not going to Margaret Brent from that area of the county, because that's a dangerous drive. Our bus drivers are here tonight. I can't imagine how you guys make those drives on those roads, any Stafford County roads, but those ones in particular with 55, 65 elementary school students. So I really appreciate the work that you guys do. So that's why I made the motion for option 3, because I think that is in the best interest of the students of Stafford County to get as few students off of the more dangerous rides. And frankly, we did get the bus route times, and it was pointed out that those students, the students that go to Margaret Brent from the England Run area, general England Run area, have longer bus rides than students that go to the Ferry Farm. In fact, the England Run Manor to Margaret Brent, they have a 40-minute bus ride in the morning. That's getting pretty lengthy. Nearly an hour on the bus for an elementary school student is a pretty long ride. And I know we have that in other parts of the county, but the more we can reduce that, the better it is. So at the end, I made the motion for option 3. At the end of the day, I'm not overly concerned about where students necessarily come from, which neighborhood, but I will continue to argue that Falmouth cannot absorb 117 or 110 students. So I would suggest that for this particular redistricting, if we go forward with a redistricting and move in any students, that only one of these neighborhoods can go into Falmouth. Now, to agree with Mr. McCosker, and if we want to figure out a motion and Scott Horan will throw a rock at us, I would be interested in entertaining an option to say, let's look at it next year. Let's look at a much broader redistricting next year. We're going to have Winding Creek and all of that coming up next year. We need to look at the county as a whole in redistricting, and I think the elementary school would be a good place to start and look.
Ms. Decatur.
Madam Chair, yeah, I'd like to follow up on that because I did second the motion, and I did go visit Falmouth Elementary School. I believe it was April 14th, and it doesn't really make a difference when it was, but I did go and I saw the classrooms. I saw how they're laid out now versus how they could potentially be laid out given any one of these different options that we may or may not choose this evening. And so, Mr. McCosker, this is not to be disagreeable or argumentative, but you did go into great detail regarding the design capacity versus program capacity, and I think that that's really important to look at all of the schools, because what I saw at Falmouth Elementary was very similar to what you're describing, in that they're having classes in the basement, if that's, I wouldn't necessarily call it that, and also things that you're referring to as closets. There are very similar circumstances going on at Falmouth Elementary, and this is the school that we're talking about moving children into. So, you know, again, that's why I'm supporting option 3. I just can't, in good faith, move that school closer to 90% design capacity, looking at the programs that they have in that school right now and the way that it's, you know, and the population of students that they're serving additionally. And I just want to point something out, because if we're going to use these numbers that are in front of us as far as this stop chart that we refer to, at Ferry Farm Elementary School, in the next couple of years, the numbers are going down as far as the enrollment is concerned. And to your point, Mr. Hirons, I wouldn't be opposed to looking into doing something in the next year or so, because additionally, again, if we're going to use these numbers, we have to use them across the board. And Margaret Brent's numbers are also going down. So, I mean, it's just food for thought, and I wanted to kind of follow up and throw that out there to you guys, so.
I just wanted to remind everyone that I heard Rock Hill being discussed. That whole corridor going down the 610 area is slated for a complete redistricting within the next year or two. So a school that's going to stay at 67%, a school that's going to alleviate some of the major crowding that's going to be at Ammonshire and at Park Ridge. So what we're attempting to do is get people to go to school where they live close. So ideally, what I would like to see are those Rocky Run at some point. So I'm probably going to support option 3 in hopes that we can get that done at some point in the near future.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I am supporting the option to move the 110 students from Margaret Brent. And the reason that I'm supporting that is because I'm looking at the actual numbers today. And I agree, Mr. Cato, this chart shows the numbers going down. But if we look at what has happened at Margaret Brent this year, those numbers have just gone off the charts in terms of the new students coming in there, you know, that weren't anticipated, and that there's no reason to believe that that growth is not going to continue at Margaret Brent. Now, Mr. McCosker, with respect to Rock Hill, I agree, and I have been inviting additional students in Rock Hill and Garrisonville, you know, for years. And I agree with Ms. Egan. I think when we relook at, you know, the situation with when we move Annie Moncure, we're going to have to relook at what this board decided a few years ago, because the numbers have changed. There's not even the capacities that we thought there would be. And then we look at Winding Creek, which is in the red, you know, immediately. You know, there is going to have to be relief given. So I don't think there's going to be that much extra room up there, you know, when we do what we need to do next year. But please send students, and we have to remember that when we send students to a school, we also send teachers. So this is not just sending students to a school without the support that goes along with them. And Mr. Hirons brought up during our budget discussion, you know, we have a part-time CTT position at Falmouth, and I would fully expect this board to make the staffing changes that need to be, you know, done to adjusted, you know, if depending on the number of students. If the students are moved to Falmouth, then the resources need to be moved with them. But the reason I'm supporting the option 3 is that I'm sorry, I think it's, which option? Option 1. There's too many options here. I'm supporting the option, let me just not even give it a number, that moves the 110. If we move the 110 students from Margaret Brent to Falmouth, Falmouth would still be approximately 147 students under the design capacity, and Margaret Brent would be 137 students below the design capacity. So if we did that move, there still would, on paper, be a lot of room at Falmouth. Now, if we need to be looking at how we're figuring out these capacities, that's another issue. But when we look at the numbers, even moving 110 to Falmouth, because right now, there are about 250-some students under the design capacity, whereas if we moved to 110, there'd still be 147. I mean, that's a lot of capacity. Now, is it ideal? No. But it's also not ideal to have a school, where they're bursting at the seams, and that's what's happening at Brent today. There is not enough room to do a lot of things that need to be done at Brent, and I'm concerned that the growth is still coming. These students were sent to Brent because we didn't have room in the South. Deja vu, here we are where we were with the high school. We had southern schools, in this case it was Rocky Run and Hartwood, that were well over capacity. They needed relief. Margaret Brent was the closest school to which they could go. So they were sent to Margaret Brent. And you're right. I mean, unfortunately, these are the students that are in that position that they could go, one to another is going to be fairly equidistant. But we don't have the bus runs to Falmouth, but it was my understanding that it would be a shorter bus run to go from England Run to Falmouth than it is from England Run to Brent. Do we know anything? I thought we were going to get those numbers, but is
England Run
to Falmouth? Yeah, I'm just looking at what's on the thing here. I've got England Run to Ferry Farms and England Run North to Margaret Brent. Oh, to Margaret Brent, but I don't have the numbers for England Run to Falmouth.
Just to confirm that, it would be a shorter ride.
So it would be shorter.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's a pretty easy assumption. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I would think, but I don't do the buses.
But if I remember correctly, some of the estimates we received from transportation very early on in the process, the times to get to Ferry Farm are very similar to get to Falmouth.
Yeah, okay. Well, and looking at this, no matter what happens, if these students don't move from Ferry Farms to Falmouth, then somebody ought to look at why they're getting to school at 8:58. I know this is all done by smart people and computers and all that, but that would be something I would think we would want to be looking into. Where we have a fairly long bus run, those should not be students that are getting there at literally the last minute, because it has caused some issues.
Just to clarify, I didn't say that it was going to be a tremendously shorter bus run to Falmouth, or I said they arrive 2 minutes before the start of instruction, according to this sheet here, and they also are the latest to get home.
Yeah. Well, they're not getting home much later than the ones coming from Margaret Brent.
The
five
latest.
minutes. But that's
The latest.
God bless our transportation people. I know you do the best you can. But 2 minutes makes a big difference when the kids have to get in and get breakfast and then get to the classroom. So right now, there is a hardship at Margaret Brent with these students. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I don't know if anybody has gone up to visit. I know Ms. Hazard is there, frequently, and I go to Margaret Brent. Of course, it's in my district. But when you have 900, just about 900, what do they have? 927 students. That is the largest school in the county. And there's no relief in sight that those numbers are going down. Even though this chart says they're going down, I don't believe in charts. I believe, my gut tells me they're not going to be going down unless we move some of those students out. So I think we need to do what's in the best interest of the school system, and it may be perhaps that we do this in 2 tiers. But no matter what happens to Rock Hill Elementary, moving students to Rock Hill, that shouldn't affect these particular students that are down off 17 and where they're going to school, because they are not, close by to Margaret Brent by any event. And let me tell you, Mr. Fitzgerald's here, and I know he doesn't want to lose any students, and none of our principals want to lose any students. But overall, we need to look at our building capacities and what can we do, in terms of servicing these students and what's in the best interest of the students.
Madam Chair. Last Friday, I went out to Falmouth, and at the crack of dawn on a Friday during spring break, so thank you to Sally and Penny for showing me around. After seeing it, I find it hard to move any children, let alone the larger numbers. So, Mr. Hirons, I'm your fourth if you need it tonight. But with that said, if there is conversation about moving this forward, and if there is some uncertainty as to whether we're ready to do this, then I think we should really strongly consider moving this to next year. During high school redistricting, a lot of folks got up and asked us to punt this, and I was comfortable not punting because I felt we did our due diligence. Not to say that we haven't here, but if there is concern that we haven't, we do need to talk about that. So.
Well, I will respond to that. I believe that we had a public hearing. I believe that we had debate. If there were all of a sudden things that this board wanted to move kids to brand-new schools, we certainly had plenty of opportunity to do that. At the public hearing, we moved forward 4 options, but I know staff said to us, if there are other options you want seen, they could have been presented that evening, and they were not. From these, I don't want us to sit up here and now second guess. We are to do our due diligence, not just tonight, we are to do it throughout the process, and I hope that we do. I believe that many of us have. So I do find that an interesting statement. Because I think there was plenty of opportunity, same kind of set of criteria and time frame to allow us to do that. I cannot put off this particular one. I can't leave a school at, let's see, as of today, it was projected that Margaret Brent would have 898 students. We have 927 as of today, which is an increase of 29 students, taking them up to 97.5%. At Falmouth, the projection was 564 students, and as of today, there's 537 students, which is 27 less students than our projection, which gives me some pause, because we have to take these projections, but we also have to use some reality of what really happened. That's part of what we have to do. And it concerns me that we would say to a school that's operating then at 98% capacity and has 3 sections of 7, 3 grade levels of 7 students on a rotation, that cannot have assemblies because we can't fit enough for fire code and such in our gym, that we would not tonight at least provide some of that relief to Margaret Brent. I don't see how as a board we can do that. This has been presented to us. We've been debating it for weeks. I will say my preferred option is to move 110 students because I think we need to provide that relief. I also think that the projections, if we drive through the Margaret Brent, which we talked about at length during the high school redistricting, since many of the areas that were moved were in the Hartwood district. In the center of the Hartwood district, we moved those, APUs that currently go to Margaret Brent, we moved to Mountain View because that makes sense. They are all sitting there together. Those are growth areas. That's why we moved them out of Colonial Forge. There are 3 neighborhoods right there that are selling this summer that they will feed into now Mountain View as well as Margaret Brent. So I will say it is hard for me to take an actual, a school that's at 67.6%, which is Falmouth, that I believe that we can't justify to our Board of Supervisors having a low capacity number for that for yet another year. We need to move some students, and I believe we need to move them tonight. Again, my preferred is to move 110 students. But if that, we will see how the board goes. However, please remember, 2 weeks ago when we talked about this topic, my concern overall about redistricting is we are going to have a very serious discussion and find out, do our parents really want to have schools at 90, and assuming that we are always going to be at 90+% capacity at every one of our schools? Right now, we have 8 schools of our elementaries that are closed because they are 90 or more % full. If that is what we really want, I will tell you, this board, or at least several of us, really committed to a class size reduction strategy. We will not be able to do that and have schools at 95+% because we are out of room. You cannot keep reducing a classroom when we have now nowhere else to put them. So to me, this is somewhat an onus on our community. Do we really want this kind of capacity at all our schools? We don't have that answer tonight. I think it's one that this community is going to have to decide. I am very much in favor of that low class size initiative, and I will fight very hard for it. But we have some major capacity issues with our different classrooms being used in different ways. So for that reason, I will be supporting the largest move of students because I don't think we can justify that. However, we will work through, but I do not believe that we should put off this at all because I don't think that we can do that to one of our schools to operate at the level that it's operating at.
Holly, just one more quick question for you. If we are to move the largest number from Margaret Brent to Falmouth, what does that do to tell me again what the capacity at each will be for next year?
It depends on if you're using projected figures or actual. I can give you both. Hold on, let me just pull up.
Yeah, both would be great, thank you. And I'm sorry, I don't have my materials with me. I got home from the surgery center very late.
It would be under option 1 that Ferry Farm would be 88, Falmouth would be 87, and the projection for Margaret Brent says it would be 83%, but that assumes that that number would go down to 785. However, if you use the numbers that are today, that there is an increase of almost 30 students at Margaret Brent today, and you say that half of them stay, if you use the $1,000, a 10 student shift is about a 1% shift of capacity. Does that make sense? For for 30 students to move, it would approximately be about a 3% shift.
Okay, so does that equalize the capacity numbers at both the schools, I guess is my bottom line.
That would put Margaret Brent at 86. If it's 83, if you add 30 students, that would be 86. Ferry Farms would be 88, and Falmouth would be 87.
Okay, good. That changed it for me, thank you.
Chair, I just want to make sure we also are highlighting, and part of the program capacity includes, or what's not counted, are the pre-K classes. And Ms. Healy was correct when she forecasted whenever we move those to Falmouth that's going to create some challenges at Falmouth and what we do with those pre-K classes. And in the recommendations for, I believe, both option 1 and option 2, which are the larger numbers. Thank you for coming to the podium, Scott, because you're probably going to be put on the spot here in a minute. The pre-K classes are moved to Ferry Farm and to the Melchers facility. I believe even in option 3, we're going to have to move one of the pre-K classrooms to the Melchers facility. What we haven't heard, and Mr. McCosker paints kind of a bleak picture of Ferry Farm, is how is Ferry Farm going to be able to absorb a pre-K classroom? Has that been discussed with the staff there at Ferry Farm, and how will they, where will that classroom be located?
Preschool.
You don't look like Scott.
No, I don't. We talked about preschool, but in multiple scenarios. If Ferry Farm will have to lose students, if we can't put a preschool at Ferry Farm the way they currently are. So they would have to lose students in order to do that. I don't know the exact number that they would have to lose. With preschool requires either a bathroom within the classroom, proximity, accessibility, and in that building and certainly others, it gets more difficult because of the disability types. The same with the Melcher complex. There is space there. It's going to require renovation. And I know we've talked preschool in the past, long-term, and the growth there. It's a division-wide and statewide issue. So Ferry Farm is not a solution unless students come out of Ferry Farm for pre-K. But pre-K from Falmouth will have to go somewhere if greater than 80, I think Sally indicated greater than 80 students come to Falmouth, preschool will have to come out. Either one or two. Less than 85, I think we might be able to maintain one. If it's in that 60 to 70 range, we may be able to maintain one preschool there and move one. But if you recall, we're still moving 2 out of Winding Creek, and we're adding 2 new. So we're really relocating or locating 4 preschool classrooms for next year. And the other schools will be close to being out of space as well.
Wow.
Of course, we knew that when we set it up. Right. We had this discussion, and the only light at the end of that tunnel is that these pre-Ks are going to be going to kindergarten, correct? The 4-year-olds will be going on
right.
to
4s
kindergarten.
will move on, but the 2s coming in, the 3s coming in, that
Right.
population is growing faster than our autism population. Mm-hmm. And all of our schools are sustaining preschool programs, so it's a division-wide. Rock Hill especially. Rock Hill will be receiving 2 new preschools next year, if the way it is right now. Garrisonville and Park Ridge, and then Melcher.
So I would remind folks, be paying attention to the effects of Falmouth Elementary that were highlighted for you, and Mr. Rain, I thank you for doing that, as well as giving us the estimated costs for the various renovations, furniture needs, moves. In all scenarios, well, now 3B would not move the sensory OT PT support classroom there at Falmouth. And we did hear from several folks from the Falmouth community that that is a vital resource at Falmouth Elementary. I know there are other schools that perform those services in their gym, but they also have storage capacity for the equipment that's needed for that specialized care. It's highlighted right in our write-up that there's a challenge of storing that equipment. Ms. Decatur saw it when we toured. I'm sure Mr. Conley did as well. That's pretty large equipment to find some place to store. Pretty tough to do. So I would argue it's a necessity at Falmouth to keep that OTPT room in a classroom. And I hope we could do that. But the only way we're going to be able to do that is by only moving, one of the neighborhoods. And obviously the one on the table right now is option 3.
I would just like to remind Madam Chair and Mr. Vice that you know, the 88% at Ferry Farm was based on the current numbers as it stands today, but on our chiclet chart, on our stoplight chart, you know, the move of next year is Ferry Farm is at 90%. They increased 20 students, and we're one of the 5 folks that are yellow to include Margaret Brent. So we are currently at 88, but
the number of real-time data, today's data, is less than what was projected for this year, this current year at Ferry Farm. So, you know, this is, I find this stoplight table very, very useful, but we have to remember this is projection. This is forecast data, and it does include forecasts on projected developments, which there are some approved developments on Route 3 that could happen, and if that were to happen, we would be in a world of hurt. But all signals point towards those developments are not going to happen anytime soon, so there's not a major threat there. But I believe the potential effect on Stafford County Public Schools is reflected within this chart on those approved developments.
yeah, I just draw attention to the 2017-18 is the year that we're talking about the move. Ferry Farm is at 90% for that move. You know, and we went through, you know, I agree that, like I said, by right happens, but we went through a whole high school redistricting, counting on the stoplight chart for the high schools, and we all vowed that these were very accurate. So, okay.
I just wanted to ask that if we were to move forward with option 3, if there was someone here that could enlighten the board on the differences and perhaps preferences between option 3A and option 3B, which has some cost differences and I guess, you know, setup differences. I mean, I can see them here on paper, but I don't know, you know, what the preferences are and what the best, you know, what would be best for the students. So I don't know if that's possible, but.
Be happy to. So option 3A, as you can see on the layout, it involves Falmouth taking some additional, I don't want to call it risk, but they are displaced, the OTPT, and that equipment is decentralized to classes versus being centralized. Being centralized, I don't want to use the wrong word, I don't want to say luxury, but it is a thing that Falmouth enjoys, where some other schools that have some of the same equipment don't. That doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do, right? So it's centralized right now, and you're right, that equipment is very bulky. 3B, although it costs a little bit more, it actually relocates one of the pre-Ks to Gary Melcher's complex, which that room, the displacement of what's in one of those rooms is much easier and less of an impact to students than 3A. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. But is it a smart thing to separate one pre-K classroom from the other? Is it a program, or is it okay to separate
Well,
one
I
from
think,
the other?
and I don't want to speak for Dr. Clark, but I think you heard last meeting that it was okay to do that, although they prefer to have classes together because they can lean and collaborate with each other and lean on each other, but that it is doable having them separated. But I'll let Dr. Clark speak to that.
Are you asking my preference? My bigger concern is long-term. We're going to need classrooms at Melcher next year and the year after and the year after. And those will need renovation anyway. If it's possible to keep 2 preschool together, that would be more feasible, if it's possible. If it's not, one in one location is also okay. But I do expect that we're going to need classroom space across the division in, I don't want to say nooks and crannies, because you can't put preschool in nooks and crannies like you can pull out resource services in an office or 2 or 3 students at a time. Preschoolers need space, and it needs to be pretty accessible. So the Melcher campus isn't an option, but it's not an option like one of our elementary schools would be. But we will need to utilize it. We're utilizing it now. Kathy Massey is always open and welcoming to having additional preschool programs there, but we're going to need them whether it's this year or next year or the years to come.
Madam Chairman, I just have a question, and maybe this is one for Mr. Haran. Mr. Hirons mentioned that if we move the 110, and I'm assuming that's the option, that Falmouth would automatically, and I'm putting my words here, lose its sensory and OP/PT. If the school would in fact be at 87% capacity, why would they not have room to retain that?
If you recall, the capacity we were talking about is design capacity, and so some of the rooms currently being used at Falmouth and projected to be used at Falmouth are rooms that were counted for 24 students, and now we have 8 students in a pre-K program, or we have some of those.
Well, let's put part of that pre-K aside. I mean, I think if we do move students to Falmouth, we're going to have to move at least one of those. Is that not correct, or do I misunderstand that? Are we keeping these? I mean, I go back to when we had this discussion with Dr. Clark months and months and months ago, and, the recommendation was made to put these classes in Falmouth, and we knew this was coming up. So, I mean, this decision was made with this redistricting, in the background. So, I agreed to it, but I knew it was going to be a problem. And I recall being told that they can be moved and it's not going to be an issue because they are pre-K and it's not like they have a continuing
They can.
classes.
Regarding the sensory room, which is the question, equipment, services, there are 2 learning support programs at Falmouth Elementary and a program for students with multiple disabilities. 8 students maximum, a great deal of equipment, rotation of equipment, changing tables, toileting, feeding, our most significant population with the most equipment. So that sensory room is used probably more than any other elementary school simply because they have 3 real highly specialized programs without preschool. You throw preschool 1 or 2 in that mix, and that, as Mr. Hiron said, that sensory room is used a great deal for students coming in for different functioning activities. Relocating equipment is one thing, and we could probably find space for equipment, but not for chairs and equipment that students are transferring in and out of on a daily basis, from lunch to feeding to recreation, leisure, academics. So that, to get an idea of what that equipment is like, it's not just adaptive physical education kind of equipment, it's daily use, is the best way I can describe it. Preschool can be relocated. I said that. I say that again. It's the bigger issue with relocating preschool is the additional numbers of classrooms that will also have to be located and relocated. And that is a population that we tend to move more frequently, and it's becoming a little unfortunate too, because they are always the ones that that have to be relocated because they're not really embedded in a school community yet.
Yeah, and I remember that from other years because I am very reluctant to remove an existing special ed program because the families are really vested in the school and in the teachers and the programs. But with pre-K, they're not really in the system.
They're not.
Until they come in, and then they're in for a year, and then
or they start as a
put somewhere
3-year-old
else.
and then have to move as a 4-year-old, and
yeah.
then they go to that school as a kindergartner. So the logistics are pretty amazing.
But they're just as likely to go to another school, would they not, or is a kindergartner?
Well,
I mean, it depends on where they live.
In the southern end of the
where
county,
they're
we don't
set.
have any other options. Grafton is full, Conway is absolutely full. Ferry Farm is dependent on capacity right now, and busing preschoolers in that southern end is more and more difficult.
Well, it sounds like we need to have a discussion as a board before we get into the next redistricting about all of these special ed programs and where they are today, what the needs are, and how are we going to meet those needs in anticipation of the future. Because that is important. And I know I do tend to look at the preschool, differently because they're, for the most part, just coming in and they may be staying at the school, but they could as likely be going, somewhere else. So I just, I'm trying to be sympathetic, but, I'm also practical. I mean, we're bursting at the seams at Margaret Brent here. And what are we going to do? Are we going to, leave Falmouth in the low 80s and leave Brent in the mid 90s? I mean, that's really what we're looking at here, especially with this pattern that we have that's not projected. It's not in these projections, all these 29 additional students at Brent today that aren't even on here, in the, what was projected. And no relief in sight. That's my concern. And I would have this concern in any
option
district.
2 meets in the middle. It takes care of the Ferry Farm 90% issue. Option 2 brings, yes, it does increase 7 students, which is a burden on Falmouth. However, Margaret Brent Elementary School goes to 87%, Falmouth goes to 88% under option 2, and Ferry Farm goes to 85% under option 2. I mean, and it's a meet in the middle. It's taking care of the Ferry Farm kids, making sure that they get into the things that I discussed, and it's also reducing Margaret Brent by an amount that we can at least get them out of the yellow and discuss a full redistricting next year, as many of these board members here have discussed tonight.
But the problem is, where are these Brent kids going to go? I mean, we're not going to send them farther away from the south. There's no, I don't know that there's no other schools in the south that have room, correct? I mean, it's a dilemma. But my problem with some of these numbers is these don't reflect the actual numbers, because those Brent numbers are much higher than, what's here. That's why we've got 2 charts. One with reality and one with the projections. And the reality is that Ferry Farms is very close to the projections. In fact, it's a little bit under, while Margaret Brent is 29 students over the projection for this year. I don't know, where does this put Falmouth, Mr. Hirons? So Falmouth's 27 under. So we've got Margaret Brent plus 27, Falmouth minus 27, and Ferry Farms minus 8.
8.
I think that if you don't mind, Madam Chair, I mean, we could sit here and argue all night about which option would be best, because we all have our own, opinions and ideals of where we want to be. But as a board, we need to collectively identify where do we want to be percentage-wise. We need to identify which chart we're going to actually follow, because if I'm looking at this one and making an argument for a case, and you're looking at the other one and making an argument for a case, we're going to be here all night long. I don't think that you can really sit here and listen to the program capacity, as so many people have discussed about Falmouth Elementary School, and feel comfortable about putting their percentage of students above any of the other ones that we're looking at moving. I mean, Margaret Brent 87, Falmouth or Ferry Farm 83, and then you're going to put Falmouth, that we've just sat here and listened to everyone discuss the programs, the highly specialized programs that are going on at that school, and put them above either of the other 2. That doesn't make any sense. And it's not looking out for the best interest of all of the students in our county. It's simply not.
However, you do realize that Margaret Brent has very high I forget how we say it, which way we go with special needs. We have some very highly specialized ones at Margaret Brent that we have to use. All of our counselors, social workers, diagnosticians, psychologists, they all share space. As I keep saying, we have to decide as a board, where are we going to go? For those who are not familiar, the preschool program is something that we are mandated to include in our schools. It is a state mandate, or federal mandate. Dr. Clark, I'm sorry.
Is it a mandate?
Yes, yes. Federal, right?
I hesitated because federal is.
Special education.
Yeah,
Federal.
preschool is mandated federally, but starting at the age of 2 is state. Within Virginia, we start at the age of 2.
So we are taking our neighborhood schools that, and we are having to increase, and I'm not saying, but by mandate, to accommodate these other programs that allow only 8 to 10 students in the classroom. I think some is in the morning, some is in the afternoon. As this board may recall, Dr. Clark gave us a very detailed and probably the best memo, as I said, from this dais, and Dr. Clark, I still stand right by my statement that that was the most compelling description of the pre-K program, and highlighting to us as a board, we're going to be adding these classrooms. If you have schools at 90-some%, which we are at, where are we going to put these programs? We need space, we need buildings. We need to find places to put these programs that we are mandated to require. What's going to happen is class sizes will go up because we are going to need to use these classrooms for these pre-K mandated classrooms, and it is not meant to say anything about those programs. We are required to do them. So that is going to allow saying, wow, we would really like to add another section of third grade, and we won't be able to because we are maxed out. As a board member, I am very committed to that class size reduction, and I am very concerned of how, as a county, we are going to be able to continue to meet that. With that being said, I was going to start to go through the motions unless there are other comments. Has everybody said approximately their piece? All right. All right, we will start with option 1. Option 1 is to APU 108 England Run North, Margaret Brent to Falmouth, APU 189 the Manor from Margaret Brent to Falmouth, moving a total projected students of 110. I'm going to go do that with each option as we go through it, so there's no confusion, if that is okay. So, is there any further discussion? I guess I should ask. I'm thinking not. Okay. All those in favor of option 1, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No. No.
Okay, Madam Clerk, can you poll the board?
Mr. Connolly?
No.
Mr. Cater? No. Ms. Egan? Ms. Egan, option 1.
Oh.
Ms. Egan, are you still there?
I guess not.
Sorry, I had you on mute. No.
Okay, thank you.
Were you answering if you were still there or the motion?
No, I'm not here.
Ms. Hazard?
Yes.
Ms. Healy? Yes. Mr. Hirons?
No.
Mr. McOsker?
Yes.
Your motion fails by a vote of 4 to 3.
Okay, so moving on in order to option 3. Let me call it out so that we, option 3 is APU 189, the Manor at England Run Apartments to Falmouth Elementary, moving a total number of students of 65. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries, I believe, unanimously. Is that correct?
Unanimous?
I didn't hear a nay.
No nays.
I didn't hear a
Did
nay.
everybody vote, though?
Everybody voted.
Okay. Or I can poll, I mean, we can poll the board. Soon we will have one that shows, but it's coming. So our new clerk, that is coming. That'll help.
It was unanimous.
It was unanimous vote. All right.
Madam Chair, I do have one question, follow-up then. In the past, and Ms. Kale, this is going to probably come to your world, or Ms. Neely, when we've done elementary school redistrictings, we have allowed for 5th grade students to continue to attend the school that they currently attend. Is that by policy, or should we have a motion to enable that in this case as well?
5th grade only.
under your directive, you can change, because, for example, Margaret Brent is a closed school, so you can change that like you did.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to allow rising fifth grade students that are affected in this redistricting to continue to attend the school that they currently attend as long as they provide their own transportation.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Do we know?
Everybody can remember this when we're going into the north redistricting next year. Precedent has been set.
Do we know how many students are potentially involved? I mean, I'm concerned if we're talking about Margaret Brent being at 98% capacity.
Yeah, with our chart.
Which chart?
That one.
I don't have that.
Yes, you do. It's right there.
What is it?
It should be by date.
Oh, is this one?
For option 3.
Oh, but it doesn't have by grade that are in the.
I don't have that chart.
Yeah,
I have an old one.
We don't have that data, though, that is from the affected
Oh.
neighborhood.
That's true. Okay, that's right. I only have it as broad.
Right.
Madam
Yes.
Chair,
Would you like to speak to that?
Option 3 has 2 options, so we need to decide as a board whether it's going to be 3A.
We
or
didn't vote on
3B.
that motion.
We didn't get that far.
I'm sorry, I only went with
that's-
option 3.
No. We didn't get to
The
the
fifth
motion
grade
on the
part.
table about
Fifth grade.
rising fifth grade students.
Sorry.
Was there a second to that?
I believe it was
Yeah, I
Mr.
second.
Cater.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just trying to keep Daryl from yelling at us. The current motion, but we do need to address that after we dispose of this.
All right, is there any discussion?
So we don't know what we're approving here?
That's what I have
I'm just
major
reluctant
concern.
to vote on something that I don't have all the facts for. I conceptually, I like the idea, but given the very limited relief we're providing for Margaret Brent this year and anticipating additional students, I'm not prepared to, to support that until I know how many
Is that
potential
something
students
that-
we're dealing with.
I agree, Trish.
Do we have the timing to get that data and approve it at our next regular meeting?
It would be on the 4th.
I'd
Would
be
you
more
like to add
comfortable
that
with
as a
that.
special?
What data are you looking for, sir? Fifth
The
graders?
number of students,
Rising fifth graders.
Rising
Sure, we
fifth
have that.
graders that
We
would
can-
be
we-
affected.
We can provide that Friday in the update if you like.
And if we vote on it at our next either regular meeting or a special called meeting, there's enough time. There's
On the
enough.
grandfathering?
I'm fine with that.
Certainly.
Okay. I would be willing to table the motion until if we want to put it on the special called meeting, that's fine. May
That would
4th.
get it out quicker. I mean,
Okay. Yep.
all right, Ms. Decatur, I
I
think you
don't
had
know
it,
if that was
or there was a next.
Appropriate tabling, but,
They got it. I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss them.
yeah.
Madam Chair, while we're still on the subject of redistricting, one quick suggestion. Since we're only moving half the number that you and Ms. Healy feel is essential to Brent, I would like to make the recommendation that we begin looking at the northern end redistricting again. We take a peek at what Margaret Brent is doing, and if we have to pull them into the equation, that we do so.
Yes, I think that Margaret Brent will be in that mix anyway, because Winding Creek's going to be in there. I think that whole corridor is at least got to be examined. And I believe we have to keep a real eye on what happens there. And I know that our budget going forward has additional resources to accommodate the changes going on at Falmouth. However, we also have identified Winding Creek as potentially needing additional resources. And if there are some needs identified for Margaret Brent because of the limited reduction in students, I would ask staff to bring that to our budget meeting if there are accommodations that we need to make at Brent to bring to the budget meeting.
To Mr. Decatur's
Decatur's point,
point.
yep, I was getting there.
And Scott, are you asking us for a board vote on 3A or 3B, or is that something that staff can deal with?
Well, sir, this is the data, the cost data.
Yeah.
Certainly, I tried to articulate the the impact to the school in each of the 2 different sub-options for 3. You can certainly decentralize it to the staff to work that out. We don't have a problem with that, I would imagine, sir.
I would potentially suggest that since the vote regarding the number of students has been taken tonight, we are bringing back a portion of it regarding grandfathering. Would we like to have a recommendation from
Yeah,
the staff
or if you
the
guys are
school?
arguing amongst yourselves and you want to kick it to the board, you know, that's what it comes to essentially, yeah. Or if you need further board guidance, if you could highlight to us prior to an agenda review meeting.
Madam Chairman, I would suggest that this coordination be done with the school. I mean, we had some, comments that there was not discussion with the teachers. I don't know, how much the principal has been involved, but something that is looking at design in the schools should certainly start with the principal. And, then it would be up to her to talk with her staff, or, her input to me would be essential in any decision that is done here. I mean, we're only talking about a $10,000 difference between 2 options. And, we want to do what's best for the school and the students, and I think the principal's the best person to coordinate with on that one. Would you?
Yeah, and I'm going to give a shout out to Sally, who looks like she walked out. Penny's here. Well, give her my thanks. She has been very involved, even back to last year. We had, Sally and I think Penny was involved as well, had a discussion at the Falmouth Amazing Race, the professional development opportunities at the beginning of the school, the first day of teachers back at school, about this particular redistricting and the effect on Falmouth. So, Sally, thank you for your efforts. I do think, she was in communication with teachers, got some input. Always room for improvement to make sure we always absolutely know everybody's informed. But thank you. Thanks for all your time and effort. And Ms. Healy is correct that I most certainly know and trust that Mr. Rand's office will work very closely with Sally's office to make sure the best is done there at Falmouth Elementary. And thank you to all the citizens that came out and spoke as well.
And just one final comment in that way, as we know, Dr. Clark brought forward the pre-K, all of this, how many students end up showing up is still always in flux. That I do feel a little bit concerned about the board picking the between option A or B until we sort of see how the kindergarten numbers come in for all the schools. Not to say that we shouldn't, because the cost difference is not that large, certainly bring it back to the board if so, but I also believe that staff needs the flexibility to see who ends up coming as we get closer to September. But, Ms. Healy.
Madam Chairman, we have a series of presentations to the board, which I find very informative and educational. I would like to request a presentation on the special ed programs and, where they are, how many students are involved, and what's going on. Because I think, the discussions we've had tonight, we've certainly focused a lot on Falmouth, and we've had some brief touchings on some of the other the pre-K, but I know that throughout our schools there are many, many special ed programs, not just at the elementary, but at the middle and high school. And I would find that very helpful to know, where they are and what type of resources that, in terms of space particularly, that we are dedicating to those programs. It's not an option. I'm not trying to cut anything back, but I'd like to know, because I think that would be very helpful.
Any more regarding redistricting? Okay, I will. Let's move on to action item now, I believe 11.03, regarding the award of a contract for the Hampton Oaks roof repair. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve 1103.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I know I commented last time about our use as we go through the projects. I think we just have to be very mindful, as we've talked about with the budget, regarding our cash capital going forward. But a roof repair is something we need to do, so. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to 11.04 regarding student transfers to a closed school. That is the superintendent's proposed revisions. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second, even for discussion?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion or questions, I believe?
Yeah, I'll discuss real quick. So I appreciate last board meeting that we discussed that the transfer policy. One thing that came up was, we just moved under our high school redistricting 200-plus families out of their high school, but we didn't address students that say, hey, I want to be an IB student, and then never take an IB class, and they go to Mountain View High School because they don't like the school that they're aligned to. And so I appreciate the staff putting in here in red about the half-day programs, and let me find the other red just to make sure. So transfers shall be revoked if the reason of the transfer was approved is no longer valid for any reason, including but not limited to not meeting requirements in any curricular program, including IB or APPX, or changing daycare provider. So, we just need to make sure that we're holding our students accountable that, say, live in my district that are scheduled for Stafford High School. They don't feel like going to that Stafford High School, and they say, hey, I want to be a IB. And IB is a program, which is a 2-year program, and it's 11th and 12th grade. And they never take, or they never come out with an IB diploma or even attempt to take. Now, I'm not sure if that's the truth. I'm just saying that we shouldn't allow that gap in policy, and I'm glad it's closed.
I would just like to clarify, I don't believe that this is in regards to that there's this flood of this problem, but I do think that we need to shore up the policy as well as we can.
Right, I agree.
Madam Chairman, I just noticed this, and I apologize for not bringing it up earlier. We say parents must provide necessary documentation for transfer requests. We probably should say parents or guardians. So that's just a minor, technicality.
Let's see, who was the motion maker on that, or the, I think, were you the, do you know who the motion maker was?
Was it Scott?
Mr. Hirons.
Who made the, Scott, did you
Mr.
make the
Hirons,
motion?
will you accept that
Yes.
amendment?
Second.
Okay.
I won, Pam.
She did put in, shall.
I just saw that part. I love the shall.
Yeah, she did put in shall,
See?
so,
Love the
good
shall.
job, Ms. Kale.
All right.
You're gonna miss me when I'm not.
No, we're not.
All those, are we ready for discussion? Are we ready to vote, or do you want to keep
Sorry,
discussion?
Trish, I'm just
Yes,
kidding.
we're ready.
All right,
I know.
all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Trish knows
Motion carries
Trish knows I half
unanimously.
love her.
All right, moving on to information items. This is an information item regarding the future adoption of the school board's FY 2018, thank you, 2018 budget. As Mr. McCosker is leaving, would the board like a moment?
Quite a privilege, 5 minutes.
5 minutes? All right, 5 minutes for the board, get up, walk around, and we will resume. Thank you, Chris. I can't imagine. Hello, Mr. Fulmer.
Good evening.
We've already spent some of our time this evening. We are going to be moving on to our information item regarding the FY 2018 budget this evening. Well, as indicated by Mr. Hirons, last night the FAB committee met to get a preview to sort of start to wrestle with the issues of this year's budget. The school board met at 5:30 in a work session to also look at different scenarios. So we're going to have all 3 scenarios at least just broadly discussed, since we have discussed this. And then The school board will be meeting next Thursday night for a work session and a special called meeting regarding the budget, as well as now a couple other agenda items. So that's just sort of the Cliff Note, big picture version before we turn it over to you, Mr. Fulmer.
Sure, thank you. I will try to make this quick but informative. Just to recap on the revenue side, after the county adopted their budget last week, and we have some other changes in revenue, we do have a net increase from the school board adopted budget of just shy of $200,000. And just to quickly explain, on our left-hand column, that is the increases from last year's budget that were approved in the school board adopted budget, increases and/or decreases. The middle column is the changes that are proposed to be made in this scenario from the school board approved budget to the school board adopted budget. So there were 3 scenarios presented to the board, and then we made some tweaks on scenario 1. So I'm going to go through each of the 3 scenarios quickly, and then we can circle back to scenario 1 if that's the will of the board. Sure. So quickly, scenario 1 eliminates the 1% across the board adjustment, but it does maintain the pay scale and service scale enhancements for the service scale and the teacher pay scale. Additionally, it makes some cuts for our new positions that we were adding in FY18, and I will flip to those in just a minute. We are redirecting some funds from Title II that are eligible to be used for professional development that are currently in the budget. So those expenses can shift over to the grants fund. We've gone through the budget with fund managers and Dr. Benson and identified some additional areas where we can reduce from the school board approved budget. Those are all listed out here and detailed on the supporting schedules. I will point out that the increase in computers and parts, so cyclic replacement for desktops and laptops, is being reduced by $326,000, but still leaves an increase, which helps get the technology department's cyclic replacement schedule. The fully funded school board approved budget gets it on a 5-year plan for replacement. So it will take a slight step back, but not quite as substantial as the following scenarios. We made some other cuts on the buses. We trimmed it by approximately 9 buses. So we had, in the school board approved budget, there were 15 buses, which was an increase of 5 from the FY17 budget. Depending on the types of buses that we will purchase, whether it's special needs, which are more expensive than the mainstream buses, where we'll fall out with the exact number of buses, but it'll be roughly 6 or 7 buses that will be eligible to be purchased next year. And we're working with transportation to pinpoint exactly which ones need to be replaced first. And so we'll, at the next work session, can have exact numbers on those buses. There were some other decreases on the expenditure side for our benefits. It's not a reduction in our benefit, just the cost to the school division for health insurance and workers' comp. Our FY17 positions that were added in FY17 after the budget was adopted, a slight increase there. Yep.
Can you go back and you flip through, so the balance is 0, right?
Oh, yes, sir. I'm glad you pointed that out.
I'm sorry, you just flipped it real quick.
Yep. No, I'm getting too vague. I apologize. So the school board approved budget had a funding gap of $5.9 million, just shy of. And with the changes proposed here and what was discussed during the work session does get this funding gap to 0.
Wouldn't that be 1?
Yeah, there's rounding there.
We have a gap of $1?
No, we're plus $1. Oh. We're over.
Yeah.
We like that.
Don't get your grammar, not math.
Hey.
Yeah, that's when we do our subtractions and take certain things and divide by 2 because we're cutting them in half, there's going to be some fractions there. My apologies. Jumping to our next one where we, from our school board budget, where we had additions in the FY18 budget for FTEs. This current scenario does reduce our diagnosticians that we were trying to add of 5. There were 2 math specialists, which are currently being reduced in this scenario. And our other support positions on the next slide, we have a CTT position, our ERP systems analyst position, which is currently funded in our capital projects fund. We're going to fund half of that in the capital projects fund and half in the operating fund for next year, is what this scenario displays, and a reduction to our VRS specialist addition. Any questions on scenario 1? And we can circle back to that after the other 2 if you guys would like.
I wonder who made that slide up. That's a good looking slide.
Scenario 2 maintains the entire 1% COLA. But in order to do that, we had to eliminate our scale enhancements for the teachers and on the service scale enhancement. We also made the same cuts that we did in the for new positions as we did in scenario 1, with the addition of 1 extra position, which I can flip to in just a moment. We also had to make additional cuts in our cyclic replacement and for whether it's computer hardware or the desktops. And once again, this gets our buses reduced down to approximately 6. Questions? And I'm sorry, this maintains the full 1% COLA in addition to extending the 1% teacher scale last year and expanding that 1% from the teacher scale adjustment last year to the rest of the employees that did not receive it. So jumping over just to the new positions change on our other support positions, you will see this option also eliminates the demographic planner position. Our last scenario that we presented was an outcome of our discussion with the FAB on Monday evening. And it was taking the 1% across the board COLA and reducing it to a 0.5%. We were able to maintain some of the service scale enhancement, leaving $500,000 for what would have to be determined by the board, how that would be allocated between the paras, bus drivers, and bus monitors. All the other changes are the same as scenario 1 until you get down into cyclic replacement again. And once again, this eliminates 9 buses roughly to leave us with 6 buses in the budget. This still leaves us a funding gap of $450,000. So we'd still have to identify that amount of funds to cut from the budget. And circling back to, I believe this is scenario 2. Even with the additional cuts to the service scale enhancements, in order to maintain that 1%, it still left us with a funding gap of $526,000 that the board would have to identify. So questions with 2 or 3, or any discussion on scenario 1, which seemed to be the scenario that the board was targeting during the work session?
Are there any comments from board members? I think there were a few requests that we made during work session. As I stated in work session this year, we had several challenges, one of them being, as Mr. Fulmer had told us, the accelerated VRS, which several of us did go down and try and lobby with Fairfax, trying to get that changed. The acceleration would have been, the acceleration out was about approximately $1.8 million, which was unanticipated for us, because if the state legislature had stuck to its, it would have been $0.7 million. And also the of course, the loss of revenue last year for the promised 2% that did not come, although the governor this year did put something in there. Is that 2%, correct, Mr. Fulmer? But it does not start till February.
Correct.
And the state legislature allowed allowed school districts, when they gave that 2%, to take advantage of that. However, it is beginning to be funded in February and is not a full year. Is that correct?
That is correct. And the language from the state is that if we already awarded the 2% in the FY17
Right.
year, which Stafford County Schools did, you already meet the requirements to receive that funding.
But I'm just trying to demonstrate that our counterparts, our funding body down in Virginia and Richmond did not help us particularly this year for localities. They accelerated a schedule that we were going to owe 1.7, and now we ended up owing 2.5. Also, a promised match on our COLAs, and 2% did not materialize at all last year, and then this year, when they materialize, it will be in February. So much of this is being funded from within school funds, and the increase in our ADM is something that actually helps us every year because we have such a large increase, which around the state, most places are decreasing. Actually, is that correct, Mr. Fulmer? As I think you were the one who also indicated that ADM in most places is not increasing.
Yeah, across the state, seeing a decline.
Decline. Stafford's one that is increasing. So we have some challenges here. Are there any comments of board members? Ms. Healy?
I have a question, and this is something that probably was discussed in FAB, but this LPN, licensed practical nurse, that is being cut or proposed to be cut, is there any discussion as to why? Did we decide we didn't need that?
No, I'm sorry. We were planning to discuss it during the work session. We just ran out of time, but that's actually not a cut, and it's an addition. That was a position that was approved in FY17, and we went back through all the board minutes. It was school board approved, I believe in November or December, and it was a compliance-related issue, and it just was not in the school board approved budget. So it's actually an addition from the school board approved budget to this scenario. This is already an existing position in FY17 that was approved.
I guess I'm confused because the school board adopted is where we're headed, correct?
Correct.
Okay, well, the chart that shows the school board approved
But these are the negatives.
doesn't include it. Well,
okay.
I mean, it goes down. I'm looking at your new positions added 2017. It's, okay, the first chart, you were just at it, go ahead.
Yeah, I was.
Move back up to that last one, right there.
No, yeah, I see.
Right there. So in that scenario, it looks like you're subtracting the cost of the LPN from the approved budget to get to the adopted budget, which I would think would be to eliminate that position.
Yeah, this is definitely adding it.
Unless it's a new math.
Yeah, no, I'll look at it, and I'll let you know in the school board news.
But it was approved, it just was not caught when we went through the original budget.
But if you can go back to that chart.
Yep.
If you go back to that chart, if we're actually putting it in as adopted to, I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know.
or the front page is correct.
Math doesn't work.
Yeah, the front page here is correct. The $1.2 million shows that increase on our summary page. So it
So
doesn't.
it's not a deduction then?
It is not. It is an increase. It is an FTE that was added in FY17.
Okay, well, where is that 979,871?
It
Is
should
that
be
on
this
page
1
one?
point. It should be this 1.2.
Is that on this first?
It's on this,
somewhere?
on the front page, about 7 or 8, 9 or 10 cells
New
down.
positions?
New positions added FY 2017.
That one.
It's the $1.2 million there. That 32 is the addition of that LPN.
1218.
No,
And then it
I'm
adds
sorry. And it's this line here, right?
Yeah, I see that. But
And so it's correct here. He's adding the 32,000 there. So that's what that
right,
comes out to.
but that's not anywhere.
Right.
So these numbers are just wrong on the attachment.
On that supporting page,
This one should be one.
Okay.
this
all
front
right.
page is accurate.
The one that balances.
I'm just trying to make
No,
these
I
all.
understand.
So we're clear, absolutely.
match. Okay, all right, well, that's good, because my question is, why don't we need that nurse? And you're saying, yes, we need that nurse, and yes, it's included, it's just on page 1 and not on page 2.
Correct.
Okay, got it. And then just as, you know, to just reiterate my comments from the work session, I very much would like the board to consider funding the math specialist, which would give every elementary school a full-time math specialist, and also funding a full-time CCT for CTT, whatever, for the one that they got a half at Falmouth. Now that we're adding 65 students, I'd like to see us fund that position full-time. And, you know, we could certainly consider deferring hiring a brand-new position for the demographic planner, which would almost be this exact same price of the two math specialists. And also, I had asked whether we could look at finance to see if we could scrub that budget to come up with that $50,605 for the ERP systems analyst. And if we could come up with that somewhere in finance, then that could fund the CTT, okay.
Computer technical training.
Which, that's just one way to look at it. I mean, if there's another, you know, way to fund these two things, we could, but I think it's time to address a math specialist. And if we're not going to do it, as I said in the work session, I want us to look at, you know, spreading this across the school district, because we've got 4 schools, correct, Mrs. Kale? 4 schools that have half-time, which means we've got, 13 schools that have full-time. And there's never been any change, you know, in that equation. So there's no rhyme or reason as to why those 4 originally were picked, other than they were part of a sample with a grant and whatever. So, you know, we need to have some kind of rationale if we're not going to treat the schools equally. I mean, we talk about parity, we talk about equality, and Ms. Egan, is she still here? Oh, she's not still here, but I'm sure she'd be very, you know, interested in this, because it also involves Stafford L, correct?
Yes.
One of the schools, okay, thank you.
Can I clarify one thing? I apologize. We did have rationale when they were originally chosen. We looked at school size, we looked whether they were title schools, we looked at that time whether they were meeting AYP. So we looked at a whole, we had a little chart. So originally there was certainly.
But we didn't choose 13 out of 17. We've added to these over the years.
I'm talking about, that was for the final 4, the ones that are sharing.
Okay.
I wanted to make that clear,
But
sorry.
this has been going on for years, and we've been adding, and I don't know that
Originally
we've
with the
taken.
grant, it was done by lottery.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I would just echo Ms. Healy's comments, in particular the math specialist. I would love to have a full-time at CTT there at Falmouth. I know the staff there would really like that as well. But the math specialists are really very important to me. Every single budget we've had since I've been on this board has involved those math specialists in some way. I think the first year I was on, the adopted budget ended up cutting something like 6 math specialists. Then we started adding them back in, and adding back in, I think, in each budget. And if we're close enough, we're very close to be able to have a math specialist back in every elementary school. That's more beneficial than many other things, and I hope we can do that. So I hope we can find that to do that.
Are there any other comments? If not, I will speak a little bit to that. I will say, I would like to see if staff can find, I believe it's 113 or 170, depending on how we do this. I know that there's been some thought about the demographic planner. I feel like half of tonight we have spent talking about redistricting for over an hour. Growth is of grave concern in this county, and we need to start getting ahead and planning. I believe that is a position we need to be ahead on, and I do believe that it is one we need to keep in our budget, because even though it may not impact each student in each classroom, moving kids around does impact, and we need to be as far ahead on future redistricting, how much growth is coming, and be able to plan better, because that does impact every student. For those who came tonight and those who came for the months while we were doing high school redistricting, it's hard. People don't want to move. The more we can do and plan upfront to make sure we have our schools and new schools open at the right time is the best use of our funds, or one of the best use of our funds. All right, we will all see each other next Thursday. I know we're not done, but regarding the budget, 5:30, is that correct, Ms. Euring? So we will start the work session at that time, and then we will be followed on with the special called meeting. May 4th, I know, Star Wars, I know, everybody's already told me. All right, thank you, Mr. Fulmer. Next, we go on to high school student fees. I believe that is Mr. Nichols. Are there any questions for Mr. Nichols regarding this? I think it's Mr. Nichols. Yes. Anybody have any questions? I think it's very self-explanatory. All right, hearing no discussion. All right. I will move on to 12.03. I believe this is to outline the procedures for parents, guardians, and others having the ability to get the SAT and ACT records excluded from student transcript. Any questions, concerns, or?
I have
Yes.
no questions about what we're doing here. I understand it. I do have an email from a constituent that said that, their ACT scores were not being sent as part of the official transcripts to colleges. It was sent on a separate sheet of paper. It wasn't actually within the college. So I guess the SAT score is given on the college transcript, the high school transcript that's sent to the college, but the ACT score was not. So I just want to make sure, is that the truth? And the concern was that, the separate sheet of paper isn't, I don't know even how they take that as an official.
Right. The ACT scores are sent to the division once a year, and it's usually in the summer, so we don't get an upload. So in order for those to go on the transcript, the individual counselors would have to load them in. But usually when they get those for your seniors, it's past due and they're already graduated by the time we get those.
Yeah. So I would ask the board that this is something that we need to look at, because a lot of, in this case, the ACT score was a lot stronger for this senior at Stafford High School, and it wasn't included in the college transcript. So, those are the two key documents I think that colleges look at. So I just want to go ahead.
What Tom just said, that's from the ACT provider that we can only get once. Is there any option to get more frequently?
Yeah. So that I guess that's what I'm looking at here. For
When we looked into this, based on a question you had earlier on.
Okay.
Here, ACT, they only send those once a year as an upload to the division. So the only way, when they get reported back to the individual schools, the counselor would have to go through and manually enter each one on each student's transcript.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty important score. I mean, this is nothing to kind of, we'll get to it in the summertime.
It might be something that we need to advertise, that if the schools you're applying to need ACT, make sure you're talking to your counselor to get your scores uploaded.
Yeah, something. Yeah.
Can we look into advertising it somehow on how the ACT scores work, and make sure seniors know that if they take them in their senior year, they need to be in touch with their
I'm
counselor?
surprised they're not sending them through the ACT, though. But, okay.
True.
I mean, that's how I thought we'd do it. I mean, we can look further into it, but part of it is a function of ACT. That's what I think we
Yeah,
learned.
so I'm sorry this question is kind of an offshoot of this, but I mean, it's pretty important,
So the ACT scores come once a year to the division en masse. When a student takes the ACT, as you know, they elect to have the scores sent directly from the ACT or the College Board directly to the school. Part of the reason why this regulation has been put into effect is because of this. So parents can now elect to say, you know what, just disregard the
Right.
ACT or the SAT score on the transcript. It might not be current because the school doesn't have the current one. So they can elect in writing to say, you know what, just keep it off of there. We're going to have it sent to the school. Plus, the student gets a copy of his own score or her own score. So I think this is trying to address part of that issue. We can't obviously control what ACT does or when they send their scores, but we could educate our parents and students to say, here's this policy, and by the way, we don't get the scores in time for them to be on the transcripts, and here's what we're going to do for you.
Yeah,
So
so
I think we can handle it that way.
Yeah, okay, so maybe Mr. Hirons' idea about, we just need to make sure we get that out there to somehow to the parents and say, hey, you need to make sure that your ACT is uploaded. I mean, I'm willing for any more feedback on a later date on this issue. Thanks.
Any further questions? Okay, moving on to something else. 12.04, approve the award of a construction contract. I feel like we have the little clapping going on to, that's right, for, in the amount of $1.9 million using FY17 annual operating funds for the Renovate North Stafford High School Library project. I believe the description is fairly self-explanatory, that we have had the bid openings, and there is a delta that we need to meet. We have, it appears, and Mr. Haran, if you want to, you can jump up here if I misspeak, but we, staff worked on deleting certain things, but there was a delta remaining of $277,000. As you can see in the agenda item, there are some savings and proceeds that are earmarked to fund this very worthy project. Are there any questions? Ms. Healy?
I just have a question. Why did the bid come in so much higher than our estimate? I mean, if we had estimated 1.65 million and the bid was off by almost 600,000, I mean, that sounds like a lot
It is.
of difference.
It is, and we were very surprised. And of course, that was a low bid. There were bids that were even higher. So we tried to go back to the cost estimator to find out exactly what happened, and we've not gotten that feedback yet. But the two areas, one, there was a high-end immersion projection system in the tech lab that was that cost estimate got wrong a little bit. They didn't realize it was high-end that we were speccing in our specs, and so there was some difference there. But the rest I can't explain at this point in time, other than the market is carrying those costs, and they didn't stay abreast of it. Perhaps things are moving quickly. I don't know. I don't have that information to answer.
It's almost
to you.
20%. That's
It
a
is,
lot.
absolutely.
Especially if we're using a cost estimator. I mean, how much do we
Yep.
pay our cost estimator
It's part of
to
the
estimate
design.
this?
We have 3 estimates during the design to help control the design cost, to keep us in our budget, and it was a miss. And as soon as I get some explanation from the cost estimators, Downing Scott, who's, they have a good track record. So you're right, it is, 20% is extremely disappointing.
However, I believe this is a very worthy project. That
I want to do it. I'm
okay.
just concerned that we're
Yes.
so far off on this estimate, and it makes me question our future expenditures. I mean, if we're estimating and then these costs are coming in, 20 plus or minus % higher than our estimate, where are we ever going to get the money to pay for it? And that's a rhetorical question, not for you, Mr. Haran. But it does concern me.
Me too.
That this is so far off, particularly since we're using professionals to prepare these estimates. And I'm sure we're paying a pretty penny to have these estimates done.
I think that's something we as a board and other school boards around the Commonwealth are wrestling with, having heard how a couple bid openings have gone recently. I think it's something we will have to be wrestling with, along with our growth and everything.
Right,
So-
perhaps I've shared with the board, or the superintendent shared with the board in a Friday update, some concerns with some of the rising costs with labor and materials. Not sure if that's the answer or if that's the excuse, but it's certainly a concern out there. We're seeing some of those trends.
All right, I know this is on for information, but Ms. Decatur, do you have a potential request this evening?
I do. I see that we have construction starting May 15th potentially, so if it would help to move it to action, I would certainly be willing to do so.
Would you like to make that a motion to move to action?
I motion to move this to action.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. This would be to move this item to action, seeing that I know that the library has already been closed, and I think the more immediate we can get started, the better. So is there any further discussion regarding moving it to action? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Do you have a follow-on motion, Ms. Decatur? Would you like to approve it?
If you tell me what to say, I surely might.
Would you like to have this item approved this evening?
Oh, yes, yeah. I'd love to have it. So I
Move 12.04 to action.
I moved 12.0
For approval.
for approval.
And is there a second?
I'll get the hang of this one day.
You will. But I know you wanted to, this was important. This was important.
Thank you.
So it's been moved and seconded by many people. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Mr. Haran, can you get them to move dirt? Okay, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. May 15th. May 15th. All right, moving on to 12.05. You have, everybody has seen the list of projects. We have our scoring criteria. Our end-of-the-year projects are listed. Are there any questions or concerns?
Hold on, I'm having one, and I'm surprised I haven't heard from you on it. The 11th project down is the Heartwood generator. How did that fall so low? It's kind of,
Thank you.
it's involving water when there's power outage there, so I expected that to be fairly high.
Yes, sir. The generator project was a insert. As I explained in the agenda item, there were some projects that were added after the rack and stack.
Okay.
So this was one, and we looked at it, and again, we have an emergency generator there. It handles all the life safety support issues. It just does not have the water distribution system and the treatment plant on the generator, which this upgrade would do that. So from staff's perspective, we don't necessarily need the water and the sewer if the school doesn't have power. We have the life safety issues associated with it to get the students out. We think it's a great idea, and in fact, we had this project already under design several years ago, and we just had to upgrade it, and that's what we're doing, updating the design. So it just was in the CIP a little later than we have, and so we inserted it on the list.
Concerns me a little. 600 kids age 6 to 11 don't need a sewer when the power.
No, I certainly, you need to understand with the package plant, the restrooms can still be used, and it can.
Can they be flushed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but only once. So, but I understand that, and that's why we think it's important. But
here's your whole
yeah.
capacity. Here's your flush pass. Holly, this is your district. You've been talking about it a lot. I don't know if there's an ability for us to move it up, but I do appreciate your explanation, Mr. Horan. I'm reluctant to doubt it, but it just worries me.
Yes.
Are we proposing to fund all of these, or is this just in order as funds become available?
I think the desire is they're in priority order, and the target that the superintendent established, and I think he voiced to the board is roughly $2 million. However, we'd like to get the project list approved in totality, and as we move closer to the end of the fiscal year, if funds were to be available above and beyond the $200,000 or the $2 million, and the superintendent wants to pursue funding it, he would certainly notify you that this is his plans to fund projects past the $2 million target.
Well, how far down the list does 2 million get us? I don't want to.
Yes, ma'am. $2 million gets us down to
Number 8.
about number 9 if you round up a little bit. So.
9.
Okay, well, I would just like to note this number 14, install modular classrooms at A.G. Wright Middle School. That is for a course room, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And A.G. Wright is very high capacity right now. And it's my understanding that is something that is not, really just a desire, that it's actually needed for that, for that area. So I would like to see if we can get that done. I can't say anything about the rest of these because I didn't score them or know all of it, but I do know that, given the enrollment at A.G. Wright, that they do very much, need some additional space. And that was at their request that this be on there.
I mean, at 10, 11, and 12, upgrading the 9/11 duress system, replacing the generator. These are just.
Yeah, the 911 duress system, how did that not get higher on the list?
Well, we do have a 911 duress system at all the schools. There's a button that it goes, but it doesn't go directly to the 911 center. It travels through a third-party monitoring place that monitors our security alarms or other alarms. And so we felt it important because there is a lag. There is a time lag, and there's a human in the middle of that. And we wanted the 911 duress to go directly to the 911 center, and so there's a cost to do that. So this is enhancing the system we already have in place.
I have to say, it's hard for me to compare room upgrades, and I am certainly not saying that Falmouth and Moncure and Winding Creek and their furniture, but it is very hard for me to look at something like 911 and generators and stuff like that and not have those. But I know that is not the scoring system, but I do have some concern.
Remember not remember, but the room upgrades were an ad, and they reflect the worst-case scenarios based on the redistricting that was just approved tonight, and also the mitigation efforts that we discussed during forecasting, enrollment forecasting for Moncure, Winding Creek, and Stafford L. So
is there any change to that? I guess.
Yes. So it's certainly going to go down based on the decision that the board chose tonight. This number, the 115, will decrease based on what we ultimately do at Falmouth. It's just a 10 grand difference. So if you take the 39 versus the 65. We used $65,000 to represent Falmouth because that was the worst case scenario in the options. So it'll go down by at least $30,000.
Since this is an information item, we can reassess if that would be updated or any other changes when we bring it back for approval, because this is information, correct?
Yeah, I'd just like to add, so you walk through Ferry Farm, so there's nothing on here about Ferry Farm except for the duress system. So is that reality where you see it? There's nothing?
Well, when you say I walk through Ferry Farm.
Well, they said you walked through Ferry Farm about a week and a half ago and kind of did a little bit of evaluation. Is that, because I guess we're not doing.
That's not correct.
Okay.
I went down there to look at a potential project.
Oh, okay.
And so we were working,
Okay.
so we're getting some pricing on that. And then just to follow up, the facility assessment was completed this past week during spring break. So there'll be, it was an upgrade of the facility assessment. So certainly don't want to characterize there's no facility requirements at Ferry Farm. There are, we know that. So we're going to capture that data, that updated, and it's certainly going to generate from some projects, especially in the light that there's some uncertainty, potential uncertainty in the future of what we're going to be doing at Ferry Farm. So,
Right.
so there's certainly some efforts.
Okay.
But they're
I just
not-
want to make sure that, this is about the
Right,
fifth
they're not
time I've
reflective in
mentioned
this
but-
particular list. I would say 80% of this list are projects that were deliberately planned over 2 years ago
Right.
to maybe 3 years ago, and many of them have been in the CIP for
Well,
3
there's
or 4
obviously
years.
some big, I just want to make sure that we're.
Yes, sir.
Ferry Farm has pulled off the rebuild, and then your notes on the CIP said that the Board of Supervisors said they're not entertaining any school builds. So that was a surprise. Now watch my face. That was a surprise to me, that they're not entertaining any school builds. That's what your note said, Mr. Hirons?
No, I forget the exact, but they essentially adopted very similar to us or the final CIP, which included reference to the two elementary schools and high school 6, I think. I don't recall.
But they did reference those at least?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like
okay.
we did, but like like your concerns of they're not actually on the timeline, so they're not
Right.
funded, so.
Right.
They're gonna be up for prioritization.
They represent, in the
So now
county
you can give your
CIP,
surprise face.
it represents the same thing that the school board passed. It was a wedge representing about $120 million over the life of the CIP for projects that far
So they
exceed.
kept that wedge?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yep.
Thanks. That's good.
Scott, real quick question, and sorry, we're way down the list, but these things, seeing them. The install history wall at Stafford High School, why wasn't that done as part of the project?
We just didn't have the budget to do that, and we knew that. That was a kind of enhancement that we'd like to do, and we were holding it to the end of the project to see if we would have the
Is this
available
the
funds.
thing we had
It is.
drafted?
Yes, sir, it is. And so we still have not paid out all the funds to our bills. We haven't paid all our bills on that project. We're still working some punch list items. And I don't think we're going to have the money to do that.
No, in fact, it would be a nice enhancement. That is a nice to have.
It
That
is.
is nowhere close to a.
It is a nice
need
to have. Yes, sir.
I would love to go to Stafford and see that wall, but it's a nice to have.
But, yes, sir.
I'm surprised to even see it on this list above anything.
Yes.
I like the idea of scoring. I'm just curious as to who did the scoring?
It was a group made up of myself, Miss Kale, Dr. Mirror, there's probably Tom Nichols, Carrie Neely, I believe. It's been a while since we scored, but it was made up of about 7 or 8. I have all the individuals listed in the
I was just
scoring.
curious, because this is something we discussed at the, with the supervisors, and we're going to have a scoring for the CIP, and we had a broad, discussion about who would participate, and we wanted to get broad representation in that group.
Yes, ma'am.
As well.
And we learned something during the scoring process, that our criteria can be improved. And so next year, we'll certainly add several areas to the criteria. It was an attachment that I included in this particular agenda item, but it's certainly going to be improved. So we can do a better job in developing that criteria. That was our first cut, or that we used under that criteria.
So we continue. Number 5 is the one that we funded tonight, is that correct?
It is the one that was approved. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And this estimate includes the contingency, is that correct?
It does. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, any further questions on this?
Are the other ones going to have to come to us for approval? Or, I'm just curious as to how we picked 5 out to approve tonight when we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 that hypothetically are
Yes, ma'am.
scored
So,
higher.
Well, because we had to bid out, several projects we had to bid out, and the roof projects were ones we chose to bid. That was the particular procurement vehicle that we used. And so it just happened to the timing. We have another roof project that will be coming on the 9th and the 25th for you for approval. This one just happened to, we had the bid opening sooner than we brought this list to you. And so we certainly will hold awarding that until you, as a board, approve this list before we start to fund these. And these are from FY17 operational savings. So until the superintendent is comfortable releasing funds, he won't release it on any of the projects.
It's just, I'm very happy to see the Rock Hill fire alarm on there as number 3, because that alarm goes off during the day, during school, and it's been doing that for quite a while, and it hasn't been addressed. So, I mean, I'm assuming that we're going to at least get to number 3, since we've already gotten to number 5 tonight, on that list. Is that a pretty valid assumption that we're going to get to number 3?
Valid assumption. One of the
Okay.
challenges that we have, Ms. Healy, is that some of these projects, we might not be able to take on until next summer because of timing. And because we're cutting it so close with our additional projected savings in this current fiscal year, I want to make sure that we have the funds that we need to finish out the school year and our commitments to payroll before we release them. So, one item in particular that will present a challenge is the track at Colonial Forge. That is not likely to happen this summer. We are going to repair it, keep it maintained such that it can be used for practice, but they will not be able to use it for meets, which is what they're currently doing. Is that correct, Mr.
That's
Moran?
correct. That's correct.
So are they coming down to Stafford?
Stafford.
So the timing.
Yeah, that's right. No, we got this gorgeous track down at Stafford. Well, that's not going to be a problem with this fire alarm repair, is it? Because I'd hate to see that have to,
No, and there are
wait another
some of
year.
the projects absolutely have to occur during the summer. The fire alarm project is one of those.
That's correct. And if you would look on the list in the far right column, there's, in the remarks, there are some dates that we require funding in order for our contractor to be able to execute this with the time they need in the summer. You'll see that some of them are May 1st. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. I don't certainly want to push you to approve this list if you don't feel comfortable, but there are some dates that these need to be approved by. And if we defer this or just keep it as info and bring it on the 9th, we're going to miss some of these May 1st dates. And it will put executing those projects in jeopardy. I won't say that we will not be able to do them, but it will, we got these dates from the contractor saying we need to know, or we need to have it funded by a certain date. And that's what we were provided. If we go back to them on the 10th of May and say, okay, we have money now, or we have approval from the board to move forward, can you still get it done? Of course, they're going to say yes, but we may have problems, struggles in August trying to complete the execution of these. So,
Madam Chair, if I might suggest, the items that are that have the timeline that's more of a challenge for us, items 3, 4, 5, and 6, funding required by May 1st, roofs and fire alarms. It would be helpful if the board might give us permission to move forward with those projects once the monies are identified. Mr. Horan and I had talked about the replacement of the interior exterior doors at North Stafford, that might be something that we ended up delaying in any case. But the authority to move forward with the fire alarms and the roofs, which again we've done the priority number 6 there with the tonight. So if that's the pleasure of the board, that would be helpful.
I would be comfortable with 3 through 6. I do have some concern jumping to 13, which is another May 1st, as you noted, date before we would deal with some of these 911 and other issues, I must say. Is there a consensus or a desire for the board for 3, 4, 5, and 6 to be approved to move forward to get under contract? 5 has already been done, sorry.
Once we determine that the funding is available, that's the other piece of it. We have to know for certain that we have those savings available to do that.
3, 4, and 6, because 5 we already did, correct, this evening? Oh, completed, 6 is also completed, I'm sorry. So it's only 3 and 4.
Madam
No,
Chairman, I don't have a problem with that, but I do have a concern about saying move forward with numbers that are below
I know.
the first two. So that,
The first,
you know, I'm reluctant to, as much as I want that fire alarm system repaired, since that is number 3, I don't want to say put 3 ahead of 1 and 2, because I'm going to respect the judgment of the people that scored this, and if they think 1 and 2 are the absolute top 2, then if funds are available, you know, I think they need to be done in this order if we're going, you know, to follow this, which I see no reason not to.
and I think if we could get that update, if number 2 does decrease, Mr. Heron, that
Yes,
would
ma'am.
allow us to move a little further down our
It
our
does
list.
decrease.
So is it the pleasure of the board to actually, from this list, I know we had separate agenda item
Well,
regarding
we've already
funds.
approved 5.
and
That's, I guess that's what confuses me somewhat. We've approved 5 tonight, correct?
You have, yes, ma'am.
So we've approved 5 and skipped over 1 through 4. I
That
mean,
may
did
have
we
been-
approve 5 because it really was more critical than 1 through 4? or-
No, it's just, it was a contract that we put out for bid. And so perhaps we could have just delayed it and not brought it to you, but we felt
Trying to get
go
it
through
under
the
contract for the
process,
summer,
the
probably.
information and action
Right,
process.
but I guess I didn't realize when we voted on this that this was actually number 5 in a list of
Right.
priorities, and we weren't addressing 1 through 4. So.
So why don't we remedy, well, would the board want to remedy that by approving tonight 1 through 4, that the authority, is that for staff to, if funds are deemed ready and available, to pursue those projects?
We didn't even put that caveat on 5, we just approved it, correct?
That's correct. And it
For no
said that FY
restrictions.
17 operational savings was a funding
And-
strategy.
And we've also used some savings, which, you know, I'm in favor of, but for North Stafford High School as well. We took several $100,000
Right.
out of operational savings that is going to mean there's
I
less
mentioned,
things on this list that, you know, aren't getting done. I just think if we're going to have a plan and priorities, then we should follow them. And I don't want to approve 5 before 1 through 4. Unless the roof was falling in which case it should move up to 1, and we're good.
Well, do we want to remedy this
Yes.
tonight? Okay. Can we, is the board willing to go how far on this list? Or, okay, Mr. Fulmer wants to speak to us too.
I just want to say, and we're going to cover this in the quarterly, the staff report that's coming up. I don't know if it's immediately following this or another item down. But from our non-payroll savings that we currently have identified, I feel comfortable that we're going to make it to number 5 and 6 on this list.
Okay.
If that
Okay.
helps ease your mind as you're approving this or going through that list. I'm fairly certain that 1, 2, and 3 will get done, as well as 4 and then the 5 that has been approved.
Okay, so do we want, Dr. Benson, what makes, what helps staff the most to be able to get projects that need to be done under contract as quickly as Mr. Fulmer tells us that we can have the money?
Yeah, so it would be helpful if the board would give us the authority to was it 1 through 6, right? Well, except that one of those we already did, which
Two of
was.
them.
Right. Mr. Fulmer we're very cautious about what those savings are going to look like in this current fiscal year, okay? We had said during the budget process, we felt like we would be able to take care of about $2 million of infrastructure projects. We think that we're on track to do that, but we cannot commit until we know that we have those savings for sure. It looks like we're headed in that direction. We need to do another payroll, which would be helpful for us on the payroll side of things. But as Mr. Fulmer stated, fairly confident that 1 through 6 is not going to be an issue for us. The challenge here is the timing again, okay? Some of them we have to initiate with contractors to ensure that they get done during the summer. So it's not that, for example, the fire alarm, repair fire alarm at Rock Hill, sorry. We need the school to be empty to do that, right? Okay? And that doesn't mean that the ones that are before it are less important. It's just that we have a little bit more time to enter into contract to do that with folks.
Although he's got funding by May 1st here. That's what confuses me.
Funding by May 1st because we need to engage the contractor to say we want them to do this work during the summer. Correct, Mr. Horan?
That's correct. They have to go through a review process with the code
Okay,
official.
so May 1st is
Project
next
timeline is
Monday.
correct, it's just
Sorry?
It's just the project
Right?
timeline.
Yes, there's a
Means it
lot of
needs to
work
be
that gets
approved
done
tonight.
That
from May
portion.
1st to when the school is empty. And the contractor has to submit drawings, fire alarm drawings to the fire marshal. He has to review them. They go back and forth with comments, and that takes time. And that's why we set the May 1st date.
So are we comfortable going through, I know we've approved previously, but if we are going with regard to this list, moving the line down to through 6 for tonight, and then we can see where savings are, and when we bring this back, we can, I guess, approve the whole list if we feel comfortable. Is that? Is that?
And then we're, in effect, if I understand you correctly, repair track at Colonial Forge is going to be coming off the list as doable this year because we won't know we have the funds in advance. So in effect, that's going to roll down till next year's
So
list.
I would highly recommend that if the board feels it's a requirement that they want to fund it with funds at the end of this year, if they're available. We just don't execute the work until next summer.
That's what we'll do.
So we
Once
would-
we run the May payroll.
We would put the money aside this year
We would
to pay
encumber the
next year.
funds. We would encumber the funds with the contractor and just schedule it for the execution of next summer.
Because that is something we need to do, but it appears we are not going to have that time this summer, unfortunately.
All right, do we need a motion to move to action, or can we just make a motion to authorize staff to execute up to item number 6?
Let's
When
go
funds
with that.
become available, yes.
I would go with,
Second.
somebody second. All right, it has been moved and seconded.
Chairman, don't we have to move it to action first?
Well, we are just picking these projects off here. We're not approving this list yet, because I'm
We're
not
approving
sure.
something, though, that's here for information.
Okay, we can,
Move item 1205 to action.
Second.
Those in favor?
all right, it's been moved and seconded to move this list of projects to action. Is,
1205 Item 1205 is just going to action.
all right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, is there a motion from?
Move to approve, to approve for staff to execute up to item number 6 on the project list.
Through number
Through.
6.
Through number
Through.
6.
Yeah.
Through number 6.
Including 6.
inclusive.
Yes.
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Now we have our
Now get to the really exciting stuff. This'll wake us up.
Thank you.
So I alluded to the quarterly financial report, and so I'm going to hit the high level on this with interest of time, but want to point out some major items. First, on the revenue side, you will see in our adjusted budget our reappropriated purchase orders from FY16. Those roll in as a revenue item, and the expenditures also roll into the adjusted budget. So our total appropriated budget from the county is actually 282. The carry forward funds of 1.25 were approved by the county, as well as the 5% holdback. I put in the board agenda item notes, just noting that on the revenue side, we do have a total decrease of state revenues of approximately $640,000, which these top two lines are our state funding between the sales tax and the state general state funding line. And that has to do with our the loss of the $1.2 million from the state for the 2%. That was for FY17, but it wasn't the full 1.2 because of our increase in ADM and some other amendments they made in FY17, but the net decrease was $640,000. I've already disclosed also to you guys about the DoD revenue. Our federal revenue decreased by our impact aid, the federal piece from DoD. And as we get down farther below, I will point out our unfunded contingency. Typically, this is a line that decreases as the year goes on, but since we have a loss of revenue, just so we don't spend that money, I move it into the unfunded line. So if we have additional revenues that come in, we will move it back into the line. But for right now, we have an unfunded contingency of $1.8 million because of that loss of revenue. And I'm going to skip down for a moment just to help explain this. On the expenditure side, we also have an unfunded contingency of $1.8 million. Those will always match up. As we move money out of or into the contingency, you have to do it on both the revenue and the expenditure side to keep those in line. So you will never see any actuals there because we don't actually spend it out of that. It's just to move it once the funding source is identified. I want to point out that prior to this report, whenever we had what we would consider a reserve, so you guys had buy-ahead items in FY16 out of the FY17 budget. And at the beginning of the year, we moved those into what had prior been reported into an admin line here in purchase services. That is, in fact, now has its own separate line. I felt it was better to call that out individually so you know exactly what we have currently sitting aside in our funded contingency and reserves. So we began the year with zero there, but because of the buy-ahead items and some other savings that we've identified in the current year from utilities and fuel, we have almost $2.1 million there, and that's where we're kind of sitting. We expect that to actually go up on our non-payroll, and that's we just had our kind of our year-end deadlines for spending for all of the departments other than emergency and mandated spending items. Those schools and departments will be, ultimately cut off other than the normal cost of doing business. And we'll go through and look up, and anything that they've unspent we'll pull into this reserve account. I expect that to get closer to about $2.5 million based on what we're projecting from unspent funds. This transfers outline that we're showing here, that's actually the North Stafford Library money that we're kind of holding right there because it is a capital project item. We haven't actually started the work on that yet, so it's not encumbered. So it's just sitting there in our available budget until we ultimately either move it to the capital projects fund or we pay for it out of operating, but the funds are set aside.
But now you can move them. We approved it.
Correct.
Thank you, Jamie.
And this is just a summary of it all. I'll also point out that any of our current POs are shown in this encumbered column. So we have currently $6 million encumbered. So the combination of our expenditures and encumbered reduce our adjusted budget to come to our remaining budget of $104 million. The bulk of that will be in our salary lines. We currently have 5 payroll lines, or 5 payroll runs remaining. And that's really the key. We're looking at getting another month here in May. We're wrapping that up and we'll be posting that payroll, and that'll give us a better idea of how we're looking on the payroll side, which is why we're being conservative right now with the $2 million that is setting aside until we know that we're comfortable. Right now we're projecting that payroll is going to be fine. It's going to be about break even, maybe a couple $100,000, but that varies on a month-to-month basis. As we hire people, as we have people leave during the year, we could have some folks retire. We have leave payouts, sick leave payouts that can hit us. So we take that in to consideration when we're projecting out our payroll. And so just a reminder that, so not only does this not reflect our May 1st payroll, it doesn't reflect our June 1st, July 1st, August 1st, or September 1st payroll for teachers and 11-month staff that continue to receive paychecks from this fiscal year, work they did in this fiscal year that is paid in July and or August and September. Questions?
None for me. Any questions? All right. If not, thank you, Mr. Fulmer, for that, and thank you for the overall in there showing about our state revenue and federal revenues. Thank you for giving us the big picture part of it as well. Our next meeting, of course, is next Thursday, beginning at 5:30 for a work session, and then a special called meeting, and then we will have our regularly scheduled monthly meeting on May 9th, the following Tuesday. So thank you all very much, and we are adjourned.
All right.